Chapter 16-19. If you miss your wife, just say so. Yang Chendong chuckled, then waved his hand and said, "Okay, tell the Black Cavalry to pack up. The ship that will take us back to Xianxia City should arrive at Lizhou Prefecture soon. We'll ferry home from there." Yang Chendong was going back to Xianxia City. He had been out for more than 6 years. This might not be a big deal for a general who had fought in all directions, but for Bugnam of Gojoseon, Yang Chendong, who was the leader of a force, it was really commendable to do this. After learning the news, Tianhu and the others naturally did not say anything. They just met Yang Chendong and promised to maintain the status quo, and then respectfully sent Yang Chendong out of Nanning Prefecture to Lizhou Prefecture. As Yang Chendong boarded the ship and headed for Xianxia City, some changes also took place in the palace of Xianxia City. In the palace, all the maids were in a hurry as they walked through the halls. The smiles on their faces were gone, and there was only some tension in their faces. If one looked carefully, one could even see some fear in the tension. Because just a few days ago, the 8th Madam's bedchamber was suddenly surrounded by a large number of palace guards, and then it was not long before Jianghu was ordered to be put under house arrest in the palace. Not only that, all the maids in the palace were taken away, and then there was gossip that those maids were taken to the musical house, and then there would be very miserable sounds coming from there from time to time. The palace of the 8th Madam, which was originally lively and full of vitality, became silent. Except for the 8th Madam, Jianghu, and Princess Xianxia, no one was spared, and all of them disappeared in the palace. The maids in the palace were a new batch, and it was said that they were sent by the princess, Queen Huyen, and they were responsible for monitoring Jianghu's every move. Since ancient times, the harem and the previous dynasty had a close relationship, which could not be cut off at will. Because in many cases, some things in the harem also represented some kind of signal. The harem could affect the previous dynasty, and the previous dynasty could also affect the harem. The 8th Madam was suddenly put under house arrest. Although the news was not publicly spread, some officials in Xianxia City still knew about it. After all, it was so big that it was impossible for people to ignore it. In the original palace of Bugnam of Gojoseon, everyone got along very well. The princess, Huyen, was educated and polite, and she was not a troublemaker. Although the other madams had different temperaments, most of them were born poor, and they wanted to fight in the palace, they did not have any clever means. More importantly, as the main character, Yang Chendong had not been in the Wangfu all these years. If they really wanted to fight, who would they fight for? Therefore, the harem of the harem in Bugnam of Gojoseon Earth was the most peaceful palace. Nothing had happened in all these years, but they never expected that this incident would be so big. They didn't even give a reason to the outside world. The princess consort suddenly took action, and the 8th Madam was put under house arrest. Of course, the so-called not giving a reason was because it was not publicly known, but most of the officials knew what was going on. That is, the 8th Madam, as a native of Japan, had pleaded with Bugnam of Gojoseon for the survival of the ninjas in her country. No matter what the reason was, at least in the eyes of outsiders, Jianghu had a part to play in it. But now, the ninjas suddenly rebelled. Although they failed to assassinate Yang Chendong under the rock, their betrayal was exposed. The other 2 special ninjas, Kitamura and Yui Suzuki, also disappeared from the ninja base. This sudden disappearance of them from the 5-star Army's line of sight was enough to explain everything. They were now synonymous with danger and betrayal. Not to mention, more than a month ago, Bugnam of Gojoseon's 4th brother, Yang, was assassinated in Nanjing, the capital of the Southern Ming dynasty. After investigation, the 5 assassins were all ninjas. All of this proved that they were dangerous. As the 8th Madam, Jianghu, who had pleaded for them, naturally couldn't get away from this matter. The 8th Madam was placed under house arrest, which made the palace that was usually very lively became silent. In a restaurant outside the Wang mansion, 2 middle-aged men were sitting and drinking. Because of their arrival, the entire floor they were in had been cleared. To be able to possess such authority, it was rare to see such a person in Crimson City. After all, this was the place where Wu Nan King's royal city was located. To put it in an exaggerated manner, the number of officials here was more than half of the entire Yang clan's territory. When there were too many officials, their power was naturally not that strong. But if one knew the identity of these 2 middle-aged men, then this matter was not strange. Everything was because these 2 had the surname Yang. One was called Yang Wu, and the other was Yang Lu. That's right, These two were servants of the Wunan family. In the entire Yang family, there were only 5 such family retainers. They belonged to the group of people who had followed Yang Chendong from the very beginning. Now, any one of them was a person of high status and power. Many times, their words were even more influential and effective than some of the Yang faction's chiefs. Now, these 2 servants were sitting together and talking about things. How could outsiders know? Any small matter that they talked about would cause a huge commotion if it was spread out. There's no need to be so formal, Yang Wu said with a smile as he took a bite of food. I'm used to it. Ha. Yang Lu laughed indifferently. Yang Wu understood Yang Lu's style. He knew that this person was prideful, lived a luxurious life, enjoyed life, and liked power. So, Yang Wu didn't say anything. Although doing this would have a negative impact if word got out, with their status and most importantly, their relationship with their master Yang Chendong, they really didn't care about this little bit of impact. After all, if there was really someone who accused them in front of Yang Chendong just because they had booked an entire floor of the restaurant, they would at most be warned to be careful. However, whether the person who complained would be able to withstand the combined wrath of the 2 Yang family servants, that was something that they really didn't know. Yang Wu smiled indifferently, and Yang Lu didn't take it seriously either. Back then, he was reprimanded by Yang Chendong and even sent to the southern Ming kingdom to manage the intelligence department. Wasn't it because he was prideful and treated people to meals and received gifts every day? Since this impression had already been formed, so what if he went a little overboard? Not to mention, Yang Lu had his reasons for doing this today. It was because some words could only be said in front of the 2 brothers. It was really not suitable to be spread out. 5th brother. Is the 8th madam really under house arrest? Did those ninjas really listen to the 8th madam's words and betray the young master? Seeing that they were almost done eating and drinking, Yang Lu began to ask questions. If such a question was asked by others, Yang Wu would not only reprimand but also warn the other party not to inquire about it. If it was serious, it was possible that he would directly order people to arrest them. But it was Yang Lu who asked, so it was a different story. He just thought that the other party was curious. Yang Wu smiled and replied, "The matter is so big, how can it be false? The 8th madam is indeed under house arrest. As for whether she is wronged or not, it still needs to be investigated. There will be results before it can be determined. But in my opinion, whether the 8th madam did it or not, I am afraid that this matter has to be blamed." "Oh, why is that?" Yang Lu asked with great interest. "Do you still need to say it?" Yang Wu put down his chopsticks and organized his words. "The ninja's rebellion is a fact. Because the 8th madam had pleaded for her, it is not too much to punish her. This is also the first rebellion that appeared in Xianxia. If it is not dealt with heavily, what if similar things happen in the future? So this time, it can only be said that the 8th madam was unlucky and hit the muzzle of the gun. I am afraid that this matter will not be dealt with properly." "So it is." Yang Lu nodded as if he just understood and then said, "Then in 5th brother's opinion, how should we solve it?" "We can't send the 8th madam to the death row, right?" "Who knows? The young master has already returned by boat. Everything depends on the young master's decision." Although Yang Wu said that he was in Kaisan City all year round, and even the safety of the palace was under his control, he did not dare to say anything about this kind of thing. This was the young master's family matter. As a servant, he only needed to obey and not do anything. "That's right, the young master will be back soon. Everything will be done according to the young master's wishes." Yang Lu's eyes flashed with a light that no one could see, as if there was a hidden meaning in his words. But at this moment, Yang Wu obviously did not understand it. Instead, he thought of another thing. He smiled and patted Yang Lu on the shoulder and said, "Lu, this time you saved the 4th master. You have made a great contribution. This time, the young master will definitely reward you when he comes back. Maybe he will give you a good job. Have you thought of where to go?" This time, it was precisely because of Yang Lu's timely appearance that he was able to save the life of the 4th master, Yang Yanghe. With this, Yang Chendong would definitely give him a good job. This was also the reason why Yang Wu said this. Let's see how the young master arranges it. Even if he sends me back to the southern Ming dynasty, I am a servant, everything will be done according to the master's wishes." Yang Lu replied magnanimously. "That's right, as a servant, we should have this kind of awareness. Come Lu, Let me give you a toast. Jianghu smiled satisfactorily. In his eyes, his sixth brother had changed, he had become more mature. This was a good thing. They were both servants, they had trained together, they had risked their lives together. He sincerely hoped that he could become better. Yang Chendong returned to Kaisan City. He left in 1460 and came back 6 or 7 years later. After almost 7 years, he once again stepped on the new pier of Kaisan City. The accompanying Black Knights and Dragon Guards were also excited. Like Yang Chendong, they were also returning to their homeland after nearly 7 years. They were also humans and had their own feelings. Now that they could finally reunite with their families, everyone had a happy smile on their faces. Chapter 1620. According to the plan, 500 of you will follow the young master back to the palace. The rest of you, go home and take a look. Beta Persei grinned as well. Following the plan that he had discussed with Qiu Vi, Dao Xiao, Ba Daojiang, and the others on the ship, he chuckled. This was Qiqian City, Xianxia's headquarters. The First Army of the Cold Front had already returned after completing their mission in Yunnan Prefecture. After all, their training was still very important. Not only was there an elite army like the 1st Cold Front Division here, but there were other Cold Front divisions as well, including 2 Navy Cold Front divisions. With such a powerful force, no one would be able to harm Yang Chendong here. A team of 500 people was already considered a lot. Not to mention, Yang Wu had already brought 3,000 Long Wei to the docks to welcome Yang Chendong. Beside Yang Wu stood another leader of the Long Wei. He was Peng Yu, who had disappeared for a long time. He was ordered to assist Yang Wu in the security of the palace. At the same time, he was also tasked with the task of training the new Long Wei. Peng Yu was also one of the veteran Black Cavalry. He had once protected Yang Chendong with Ba Daojiang and was deeply trusted. The 3,000 Long Wei behind him was the result of his training. They were all from clean families and were the cream of the crop among the young people. Individually, they were all experts who could fight against 10 or even dozens of people. After all, the Black Cavalry would also have sacrifices. They would slowly grow old, so replacement was very important. If they were not prepared in advance, the number and quality of the Black Cavalry would be worrying. Since Peng Yu was willing to accept such an important task, it was clear that Yang Chendong trusted him. When he saluted Yang Chendong at the docks, his eyes were cold and filled with the aura of a soldier who was willing to die for his bosom friend. Not bad. Yang Chendong watched as Peng Yu walked up to him and praised him generously. He even patted Peng Yu's shoulder to encourage him. Feeling Yang Chendong's big hand patting him, Peng Yu was very excited. He straightened his body and said, "Everything is what this subordinate should do. I only hope that the 6th young master can bring me along the next expedition. I also want to go to the battlefield to kill enemies." Ha ha ha, it's approved. Yang Chendong had always appreciated the general's willingness to unleash their fighting spirit without holding back. A general with vigor might not necessarily win a battle, but if he didn't even have vigor, it would be very difficult for such a general to win a battle. City Lord Yu Qian also brought a group of civil officials to the pier to welcome the arrival of their king. Compared to the last time he saw Yu Qian, he looked even older this time. Even his head was covered with white hair. Even when he walked, his footsteps were a bit unsteady. In history, this Yu Qian, who had long passed away, had his fate completely changed because of Yang Chendong's arrival. He was now Xianxia's helmsman. It could be said that Xianxia could not be where he was today without Yu Qian's efforts over the years. It was only in recent years that he became older and did not do everything himself like before. Instead, he put down his power and began to train young people like Luan Shaochen. But many times, he still needed to make the final decision in the end. Yang Chendong had always been very respectful to this great hero. Without waiting for the other person to step forward, he took the initiative to walk over and extended his right arm. "Yu Qian, the wind is strong by the sea, you don't need to come over." "Haha, I'm welcoming our hero, our king." Yu Qian, who was usually reserved, cracked a rare smile and said with a chuckle. Thinking back to when the two first met, Yu Qian was filled with hostility towards Yang Chendong. He had even tried to impeach Yang Chendong. Later on, he was tricked into coming to Crimson City. He was also very unwilling, thinking that Yang Chendong was a traitor of the Great Ming Dynasty. Establishing his own faction would only weaken the strength of the Great Ming Dynasty, and he was courting his own destruction. But when he really began to understand Yang Chendong's thoughts and saw what he did, the old man slowly changed his view. Later, he began to wholeheartedly devote himself to it, truly thinking about the future of the Yang family. Now, he was completely moved by Yang Chendong's actions. He also deeply understood a principle. If the Han people wanted to become stronger, they could only do so under the leadership of Yang Chendong. Yu Qian was not a stubborn person. This could be seen from how he commanded the defense of the capital in history. The reason why many people said that he was too straightforward was because he was not greedy as an official. This made many people feel that he was out of place. Just like when he was managing the entire Xianxia, many of his actions proved that he was a flexible person. Some of his ideas and actions also proved that some people could achieve great things as long as they were given enough trust. Yu Qian was indeed a person worthy of being entrusted with great matters. Whether it was his ability or his personal integrity, there was nothing to nitpick about. Thus, when he saw that Yu Qian was old, Yang Chendong could not bear to see him like this. He took the initiative to greet the other party and said that there were many things that he would need Yu Qian to handle in the future. Yu Qian happily replied, "Your Majesty, please be at ease. The Han people have not been liberated yet. These old bones of mine can still hold on." After greeting Yu Qian, the second person in line was the young Luan Shaochen. He was in his 30s, but compared to Yu Qian, he was naturally younger. Currently, most of the matters in the city lord's residence were managed by him. In fact, after 2 terms as a provincial governor, he had indeed been tempered. Now, he was handling the entire Xianxia issue quite well. But it was only not bad. Perhaps it was because of his background. Luan Shaochen was not muddle-headed on major matters, but he was always willing to stick to the small matters. In terms of ability and the overall situation, he was naturally far inferior to Yu Qian. This time, Yang Chendong returned to Qixin City to resolve this matter. Without Yu Qian to manage the specific matters, Yang Chendong decided to set up a cabinet. In the future, the major matters of Xianxia would be handled by the cabinet. You are also not bad, but you need to continue to work hard. Yang Chendong looked at Luan Shaochen with a smile, as if he was praising him, but also as if he was reminding him. As soon as these words were said, Luan Shaochen's face immediately became a little ugly. He knew that his recent actions were somewhat inappropriate, and if he said that he had no selfishness in this matter, he was afraid that he would not believe it. This matter was referring to the matter of the 8th Madam Junko. Because of the ninja rebellion, Junko was put under house arrest by the Imperial concubine Hu Yan. This matter was a state matter, and it was also Yang Chendong's family matter. If Yu Qian expressed some opinions on this matter, it was not a big deal. After all, he was not qualified to do so. But the bad thing was that Yu Qian had not expressed his opinion, or he did not intend to express his opinion at all, but Luan Shaochen expressed his opinion, and that was, he questioned the actions of the Imperial concubine Hu Yan. As everyone knew, Luan Shaochen's sister was Yang Chendong's 6th Madam Luan Xiaoyu. And the 6th Madam also gave birth to a son for Yang Chendong, named Yang Chong. According to the teachers of several princes, this Yang Chong was very smart. Yang Chendong's son was also very smart, his mother was also favored by the king, and his uncle was the deputy city lord. In fact, he was the future city lord candidate. When all these things were placed on one person, it was impossible not to think too much about it. Just like in the people, there were many people talking about it. The eldest Prince Yang Bo was very good, but the youngest Prince Yang Chong was also very smart, and also had the opportunity to inherit Yang Chendong's position. No one knew who spread this rumor, but as time passed, it became more and more intense. At this moment, Luan Xiaoli, as the deputy city lord, privately expressed his disapproval of the imperial concubine Hu Yan's approach to the 8th Madam. This matter spread out, and it was natural to imagine what the people below would think. Those who did not know, only thought that Luan Shaochen was doing business. But those who knew some of the details were wondering if Luan Shaochen wanted to stand up for his sister, and also for his nephew to inherit the position. This matter inevitably spread to Yang Chendong's ears. Just when Beta Persei asked if there was a need to clarify that it was Yang Chendong's idea to put the 8th Madam under house arrest, he shook his head. He knew that there was no smoke without fire, and this was a good opportunity to test Luan Shaochen. Yang Chendong was in the prime of his life, and he really did not think too much about the so-called successor. If it wasn't for the fact that this trip to Southern Cloud Manor was somewhat risky, he wouldn't have been able to establish the position of the successor so quickly. Because he had confidence in himself and most of the leaders of Xianxia, Yang Chendong did not make a sound, but just watched silently. He wanted to see who else would speak out on this matter. Sure enough, after Luan Shaochen spoke out, there were many officials who expressed their dissatisfaction with the imperial concubine Hu Yan in private or on certain occasions. These people were all recorded one by the Long Wei led by Pang Yu, and then investigated one by one. Because he knew that there was a traitor, Yang Chendong did not use any outsiders for this matter, and only arranged for Long Wei to do it. Under such caution, there was really no news, but it also let more people jump out unknowingly. Yang Chendong's sentence just now that she still needed to work hard was an indirect reminder to Luan Shaochen that there were some things that she still did not do enough. Of course, if the Dragon Guards hadn't investigated and found out that Luan Shaochen didn't want to stand up for his sister or his nephew, Yang Chong, and was just expressing his opinion from the bottom of his heart, and those who followed him were mostly speaking with a matter-of-fact attitude. If they didn't have any connections, this time it wouldn't be a warning, but a direct arrest. Where there were people, there was Jianghu. There were conflicts in Jianghu. Yang Chendong had long known that this was unavoidable, especially when Xianxia's plate was so big, and there were so many officials, and the benefits were so great that countless people would be jealous. For their own selfish interests, it was inevitable that they would do something excessive. Chapter 16:21. But as long as these people did not cross the red line, although Yang Chendong would punish them, he would not kill them. After all, he had to give people a chance to correct their mistakes, right? But if they really stepped on the red line, for example, they wanted to rely on their own strength to connect more people and shake the position of the air, then Yang Chendong would never let them off easily. Even if this person had great merits, it could not make up for such a mistake. Luan Shaochen did not cross the red line. Yang Chendong just reminded him. But even so, it made Luan Shaochen's face change greatly, and his heart woke up. In fact, after saying these words that day, he regretted it a little. Afterwards, he was reprimanded by his sister, Luan Xiaoyu. This was the first time his sister was angry with him in all these years. At that time, Luan Shaochen did not think that he had done anything wrong. After hearing his sister's analysis, he knew that his behavior could easily lead to misunderstandings. Especially when some of the officials who had a good relationship with him also expressed their opinions afterwards. He knew that his influence was great and the consequences of his words and actions. Fortunately, Luan Xiaoyu was really a smart woman. In her words, she was already very satisfied that the Luan family could go from a poor family that could not even solve the problem of food and clothing to today. Big Brother, Luan Xiaoyu's private name for Yang Chendong, had already given too much to the Luan family. But Big Brother could give, but the Luan family could not accept. Otherwise, they would not know what was good for them. If they did not do well, they would lose everything they had now. Luan Xiaoyu also said that Hu Yan had already done very well as the legal wife and had never had the intention to bully her sisters. Moreover, Hu Yan was Big Brother's first woman and also the woman he valued the most. No matter what she did, whether it was right or wrong, only Big Brother could say it. No one else had such authority. It could be said that Luan Xiaoyu's love for Yang Chendong was absolutely from the bones. It was because of this that she was willing to use her life to defend Yang Chendong's dignity. If someone wanted to offend, even if it was her own brother, she would not be rude. Brother, now that I have Yang, I am already very satisfied. It is the best thing that Yang can grow up happily and healthily. Let's not casually add more burdens to him, okay? That may not be what he wants. In the face of his lovely sister's request, what else could Luan Shaochen say? Not to mention that he didn't have such a strong desire to support his nephew. After all, their Luan family had just risen and lived a good life for a few days. Even if he did, he could dispel it after listening to Yi Qingyu's words. This was a private conversation between the two siblings. Yang Chendong did not know about it. Even the resourceful Long Wei could not find out about this. However, based on Yang Chendong's understanding of Luan Xiaoyu, he still remembered the kindness in her eyes when they first met. Yang Chendong firmly believed that his Xiaoyu was not a woman who fought for power and profit. This should be her nature. There were other officials present at the dock. Yang Chendong shook hands with them one by one and chatted with them for a while. Then, a tram with wires hanging from its head drove over. Over the years, since the first battery-powered machine, battery-powered vehicles began to be used vigorously, but they could only be used to make some small vehicles such as motorcycles. However, the development of trams began to accelerate after they had the wires on the tracks. Now, a 19-seater long car could be built. It was said that a 35-seater longer car would also be trialed successfully. After getting on the tram, Yang Qindong said goodbye to everyone and went straight to the palace. He couldn't help but feel nervous. He still remembered that when he came back last time, his eldest son, Yang Bo, didn't dare to recognize him. From this point of view, he was somewhat unfit as a father. And now, Yang Qindong, who already had many children, did not grow up with his children. Thinking about whether his children would recognize him when they saw him, whether they would call him father, or whether they would simply reject him, he actually felt a little uneasy in his heart. The tram moved and finally came to the palace. Here, Hu Yan had been waiting here for a long time with a group of princesses and children. When they saw a group of black cavalry dragon guards protecting a tram in the distance, everyone couldn't help but stand up straighter. The tram stopped, and Yang Qindong was the first to step out of the tram. It only stopped for about 2 or 3 breaths of time, and his eldest daughter, Lei, trotted all the way to him. As the eldest daughter, Lei was the king of the children. She bragged more than once about how close she was to her father in front of her younger brothers and sisters. In this matter, Yang Bo had some right to speak, but he thought that he was a man and shouldn't be so pretentious, so most of the time, he didn't speak, which allowed Lei to be in the limelight. Now that Yang Qindong finally appeared, among the many children, the word father seemed to only appear in the mouth of others. Although their mother had taught them many times, the moment they really saw Yang Qindong, they were still a little scared and at a loss. Only Lei rushed over recklessly. Lei, who was already 14 years old, had already grown into a big girl. She had inherited the common good points of Yang Qindong and Xiao Yin, and was very beautiful. When she rushed into Yang Qindong's arms, Bugnam of Gojoseon, who had faced 30,000 cavalrymen alone on the battlefield without batting an eyelid, was moved. He quickly opened his arms and hugged Lei. Then, he quickly spun a few rounds, causing Lei in his arms to laugh non-stop. Father, Lei missed you. Lying in Yang Qindong's arms, Lei didn't forget to act coquettishly. Father also missed Lei. Yang Qindong said from the bottom of his heart. Then father, is Lei pretty? Looking at Lei's expectant eyes that flickered as if they could speak, Yang Qindong laughed loudly and played along. Of course Lei is pretty. Lei is the prettiest girl in the world. Hee, father said so. Lei is the prettiest girl in the world. Lei laughed happily. Then, she didn't forget to turn around to look at her younger brothers and sisters, especially her younger sisters, who seemed to be showing off something. Perhaps it was because of her bloodline, or perhaps it was because of a child's desire to compare, but Lei's performance really stimulated the other young princesses. For example, the second princess, Yang Nua, 4th Madame Dong Xianxiang's daughter, the third princess, Yang Ting, 5th Madame Tuoya's daughter, and the 5th princess, Yang Lin, 5th Madame Hu Yan's daughter, who was also 6 years old, immediately left their mother's arms and ran towards Yang Qindong. They seemed to want to prove themselves, to prove that they were the prettiest and cutest girls in the world. Seeing his 3 daughters running towards him, Yang Qindong quickly stopped spinning and put Lei down. But then, Lei's voice rang in his ears. Father, I'm amazing, right? Look at how my younger sisters want to get close to you so quickly. Lei is so smart. Yang Qindong laughed and sighed in his heart. A 14-year-old girl already knew how to manipulate people's hearts. He had to admit that children born in the royal family matured faster than children born in ordinary families. Yang Qindong's arms were long enough, his arms were big enough, and he had enough strength. With his 3 daughters in his arms, he didn't feel pressured at all. On the contrary, the 3 girls were at ease in his arms. The mischievous Yang Qindong even dared to stretch out her small hand to grab Yang Qindong's beard. When she realized that this father she met for the first time not only wasn't angry, but also intentionally made a funny face, she giggled and then wanted to repeat her actions. If not for Hu Yan's quick reflexes, Yang Qindong's beard would have been pulled out in a short while. The madams took over their respective daughters. Next, it was time for the boys to greet each other. The first to bear the brunt was the eldest son, Yang Bo. He, who was already 11 years old, appeared to be very calm. Although he also wanted to be close to his father like sister Lei, he knew that he was a boy, and also the eldest son. It was not appropriate to do so. So when he saw Yang Chendong in front of him, he suppressed his excitement and stood there quietly. He bowed and said, "Child Yang Bo greets father." Yang Chendong was very satisfied with Yang Bo's calmness. Although he wanted his children to play more when they were young, since they were his children, they had to bear too much pressure. It was better for them to be mature and stable earlier. "Bo, you've grown taller and stronger. Very good. Father is very pleased." With this praise, Yang Bo's small eyes began to redden. Ever since he knew what it meant to be the successor, how powerful Xianxia was, and how this position, this great responsibility, and this heavy burden fell on his shoulders, he became more hard-working than before. He woke up early and worked late every day to learn literature and martial arts. Now that he had finally received his father's approval, compared to this, all his previous efforts were worth it. Although Yang Bo was only 11 years old, he had experienced more hardships than other children his age. When he was 3 years old, he entered the preschool of the Yang Family Academy to learn how to read and do math. When he was 5 years old, he entered primary school and began a deeper level of cultural studies. When he was 8 years old, he joined the children's regiment and began basic physical training. This year, when he was 11 years old, he entered secondary school to learn more cultural knowledge. Next year, he was preparing to enter the youth regiment from the children's regiment, so he began to experience real training to deal with local security. This was what he had to face and pay as a prince. In ancient times, it was more difficult to be a prince. Some even had to train their ability to be independent when they were 3 or 4 years old. They had to stay away from their parents and live outside. Every day, they had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to study. Even so, they might not be able to stand out from the other princes. This was because in the end, it still depended on talent, how much the emperor liked you and how much luck you had. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to ascend to the throne. Chapter 1622. On this point, Yang Bo was at least lucky. He was Yang Chendong's eldest son, and his mother was the first consort, Hu Yan. As long as there were no major problems, his chances of inheriting the throne were the highest. Of course, all of this was based on his talent, and he had worked hard. It was precisely because he knew all of this that although it was a little bitter now, Yang Bo had never rejected it. On the contrary, he would do his best to do everything that was arranged for him. Sometimes, even his mother Hu Yan would feel sorry for him. But she was unable to dissuade him. This was his life, and he should pay the price. Therefore, to be able to become a great person, it was not as simple as luck. Most of them had really put in a lot of effort. Other than a few children with heaven-defying luck, most of the time, it depended on how much effort they put in to obtain the benefits. Yang Bo had always been working hard. He wanted to follow in his father's footsteps. He wanted to prove himself. He wanted to be able to make Yang Chendong proud of him one day. In the face of such an ambitious child, Yang Chendong was of course very happy and gratified, and appropriate praise was needed. And as long as he did not overdo it and did not let the child grow arrogant, there would not be any problems. Instead, it would make the child work even harder. He patted Yang Bo's shoulder, and looked at him as if he was already an adult, or a warrior. Sure enough, it made Yang Bo very excited. Just based on that pat, that kind of recognition, his years of hard work had not been in vain. After Yang Bo, it was Yang Cheng's second son, Luan Xiaoyu's son, Yang Jun's third son, 3rd Madame Xiao Yushua's son, and Yang Zhao's 4th son, 7th Madame Suman Er's son. The 3 boys were the same age, and there was not much difference in height. This was also the first time the 3 children had seen their father in a real sense. Before, they had only seen him in portraits, and even more impressions were formed from the discussions of others. Now that they finally saw the real person, the 3 children who were only 6 years old were more or less reserved. But under the encouragement of their mothers, they still called out timidly, "Greetings, father." "Haha. Greetings." Yang Chendong laughed heartily as he squatted down. Then, he touched the faces of his 3 sons, and handed over a delicate toy water gun to the 3 boys. This was the first product of the newly established toy factory in Crimson City that was about to go offline. As Xianxia continued to grow stronger and richer, she was no longer satisfied with the standard of living. Instead, she began to pursue more spiritual things. The demand for cosmetics for women, bicycles for men, and even more advanced electric cars and steam cars as well as toys for boys and dolls for girls, was also increasing. Assets needed to flow in order to better stimulate the market. Only when everyone was brave enough to spend could the economy develop more smoothly and rapidly. When his subordinates sent the investigation results to Yang Chendong, he waved his brush and many more factories appeared in Crimson City. It was only because the manufacturers of dolls had yet to produce products. After all, Yang Chendong's requirements for these things were still very high. At the very least, the dolls not only had to be sturdy and good-looking, but also couldn't have any shoddy materials. That was why they had yet to produce a finished product. But one could imagine that once a finished product was produced, the princess would definitely be the first to receive it. As for Yang Bo, Yang Chendong didn't intend to give him these things to play with. He had already grown up. Yang Chendong also promised that when he reached 14 years old, which was the time when the ancients came of age, he would personally give him an exquisite handgun. For this reason, Yang Bo was also looking forward to that day. After receiving the water gun, Yang Chong and the others were all excited. If it wasn't for the presence of their father and mother, they would have already gone to play with it. At this time, Yang Chendong finally had time to greet his wives. In public, ignoring the shocked gazes of others, Yang Chendong first hugged the first consort, Hu Yan, making her blush. Next, Chao Yin, Lady Shui, Lady Xiang, and the others hugged him one by one. Yang Chendong naturally understood the principle of worrying about the lack of equality. He had to treat everyone equally. Otherwise, if he hugged someone less, it was inevitable that others would interpret it in various ways. Who knew how big of a wave it would cause? At this moment, with Yang Chendong's status, his every move would often attract all kinds of guesses. He really had to be careful. Yang Chendong finally stepped into the palace and participated in the welcoming banquet prepared for him by the first madam, Hu Yan. For a moment, the palace became lively again, as if the incident with the 8th madam didn't happen. Yang Chendong's return caused the entire palace to become festive and lively. However, in one of the chambers in the palace, a woman was sitting on the edge of the bed with a cute girl in her arms. The woman's figure was very good, and her skin was very white. If you looked closer, you would see that she had a beautiful face. The only flaw was that her eyes were a little red and swollen. If you looked carefully, you could see 2 streaks of tears slowly flowing down from the corners of her eyes. She was the 8th madam, Junko. Although she was a princess of the Japanese Empire, there had always been a tradition in the Japanese Empire that the husband was the leader, and the husband was the sky. It was said that once a woman got married, she had to put her husband first and foremost. Junko was no exception to this. Since she married Yang Chendong, she really regarded him as the sky. Especially after Yang Chendong helped her avenge her father, mother, and brother, her heart was only left with Yang Chendong. It wasn't until after she gave birth to little Yang Chendong in her arms that she found a new comfort in life when Yang Chendong wasn't around. She usually accompanied little Yang Chendong as she grew up, and then taught her what she had learned in the Japanese Empire. The rest of the time, she waited for news of her king, Yang Chendong, and looked forward to his return. Such a woman didn't care about anything in the world, let alone the Japanese ninjas. She didn't even know where they went. But now, the ninja first assassinated Yang Chendong, and then assassinated Master Yang Si, and almost succeeded. After the incident, Junko, who had spoken for the ninja, was implicated and put under house arrest in the palace. All the personal maids were sent away, and at this moment, there were only some new maids and her precious daughter, little Yang Xian, who she didn't know. Even so, Junko never gave up. At this point, it had to be said that this was related to Junko's education since childhood. She was full of tenacity and believed in her innocence. She was waiting for the return of Yang Chendong. She believed that on that day, her identity would be revealed. And today, Yang Chendong returned. Junko also deliberately dressed up, because according to the rules, she could welcome her king at the gate of the palace. No matter what, she was still the 8th wife of Bug Nam of Gojoseon, and this identity hasn't been erased. When she finished preparing everything and dressed her daughter, little Yang Xian, beautifully, she suddenly received word from Hu Yan that there was no need for her to attend the welcoming ceremony, and that it would be better for her to reflect on her mistakes in her chambers. At this moment, Junko couldn't stop her tears from flowing. But she didn't resist, because she knew that Hu Yan, as the legal wife, had the power in the entire palace. This sister of hers didn't express her opinion on ordinary matters, But once she did, no one could doubt her authority. With a face full of disappointment, Junko returned to the palace. Then, Junko found that the way the maids looked at her changed, from disrespectful to somewhat disdainful. Especially the head maid sent by the higher-ups, Cui Xiu'er, who directly showed a look of disdain in her eyes. Every princess has a personal maid. Such maids generally follow them for the longest time. And they are also the ones who know their hearts the best. Usually, they also serve as mentors. For example, the head maid of Junko was Miko, the former spy of the CIA, who later broke into the palace of the Japanese Empire and saved Junko. Because they had gone through life and death together, Miko knew Junko very well, and some things were properly arranged, which made her very satisfied. But since the accident, Miko was also taken away, and no one knew where she went. In exchange, Cui Xiu'er, the female head maid who looked good, but there was always a flash of fierceness in her eyes, which made people dislike her. It was said that she was recommended by Brother Yang. It was said that Cui Xiu'er used to be a spy of the CIA, but because of an injury, it was not so convenient for her to move around, so she asked for a job in the palace. Now she didn't know what kind of luck she had, but she was valued by Brother Yang and became the head maid of her own palace. Perhaps it was because everyone knew that she was recommended by Brother Yang, so everyone in the palace was very respectful. So Cui Xiu'er felt a little bit like a servant bullying the master, and now she was giving Junko a bad attitude. If it were the side concubine of Class 1, she would have already made a scene, or at least let more people know what happened to her. But Junko didn't. Instead, she still did what she should do, as if nothing had happened. The only thing was that she was not as willing to speak as before. All this was because Junko believed in Yang Chendong, believed in her king, and believed that her wise king would investigate everything clearly and give her justice. Because of this, no matter what kind of attitude Cui Xiu'er had towards her, she didn't say a word. She just sat by the bed holding little Yang Xian, motionless. The sky gradually darkened, and the banquet in the palace was also coming to an end. Yang Chendong seemed to have drunk a little too much because he was happy. With the help of concubine Hu Yen, he went to concubine's palace. The banquet naturally ended, and the other side concubines also returned to their respective places with their maids. The palace became quiet again. Chapter 1623. It had been proven that Yang Chendong didn't send anyone to summon Junko. It was as if the eighth wife didn't exist. This made the maids, who originally had hope, become disappointed. Many of them began to look at Junko with a trace of contempt like Cui Xiu'er. People were like this. When you were in power, even a fart would be fragrant. On the contrary, when you lost power, no matter how well you did, you wouldn't hear a word of encouragement or praise. This was especially true in the harem. A concubine who lost power often lived worse than an ordinary maid. This was the reality. When the sky was completely dark, Cui Xiu'er left with a complacent look. It was said that fifth brother Yang was looking for her. Looking at her swaying butt and leaving with a complacent look after carefully dressing up, many maids couldn't help but curse her in their hearts, but on the surface, they still respectfully watched her leave. When the foreman was gone, the maids' hearts were scattered. In addition, a few kind-hearted maids came to greet Junko and asked if she needed them to help make the bed. After being refused, the huge palace quickly quieted down. In the night, a breeze blew from time to time, blowing the red candles and shaking them constantly. In the shadow of the red candles, Junko sat there holding little Yang Xian who had fallen asleep. Her eyes were empty and powerless. At this moment, Junko was very unwilling. She couldn't understand why Yang Chendong didn't care about her. She had to admit that when Yang Chendong married her, it had a certain relationship with the political situation of the Japanese Empire. For example, after Yang Chendong became the son-in-law of the royal family, it played a great role in Xianxia's takeover of the entire Japanese Empire. But it was undeniable that Junko could also feel that Yang Chendong still had feelings for her. The two first met in the capital of Beiming, and then spent 3 years together in the Yang Family Academy. So the two had a foundation of feelings. In the beginning, there was some estrangement because they worked for different masters. But now, Neon had become a small Neon province and a member of Yang's faction. Everyone was on the same side. This kind of estrangement should also disappear. But why did Yang Chendong come back and not care about her? Did he also think that the ninja assassination had something to do with her? Junko was a woman, but now she had another identity. a mother with a daughter. Her heart only cared about Yang Chendong. She had long forgotten about restoring the original prosperity of the Japanese Empire. With the current strength of Xianxia, if the Japanese Empire, it would be self-destruction. If it. Moreover, over the years, the population had been constantly moving out. There were probably not many neon people left in their homeland. How could they talk about independence? This was a fact that everyone could see. So why didn't Yang Chendong see it? If he had seen it, why didn't he ask about it when he realized that she wasn't in the welcoming party or at the welcoming banquet? Or was it because he was tired of her? Or was it because he had used her? Now was the time to draw a line? Junko couldn't figure it out. The more she thought about it, the more she thought about it. The more she thought about it, the more she thought about it. Her mind was full of bits and pieces of her time with Yang Chendong. Tears unconsciously flowed down her cheeks and fell on little Yang Xian, who was sleeping soundly. Hey, it's fine if you don't care about your body, but why do you have to drop your tears on Xian? Aren't you afraid of waking her up? Let me tell you, children need to get enough sleep, so they can grow more cute and beautiful. A voice suddenly sounded beside her, but Junko, who was in her own world, didn't seem to notice it. She thought that she was hallucinating, because she could hear that it was the voice of the king that she had been thinking about day and night. Ha ha! After a bitter laugh, Junko muttered to herself, even the king doesn't care about me, why should I care about myself? Nonsense, who said that this king doesn't care about you? The voice rang in her ears again, but this time, it was so clear and real that Junko couldn't help but turn around. Then, she saw Yang Chendong standing beside her, full of energy and vigor. If it was only Yang Chendong who appeared, Junko might have thought that it was because she missed him. But when she saw that in addition to Yang Chendong, even Consort Hu Yen was standing beside him, she knew that this was definitely not an illusion. Ah, my king. Junko woke up and was about to stand up and salute. No need, don't wake little Xianer up. Yang Chendong was already prepared, so he reached out his right hand and gently pressed down on her. After feeling the warmth from his big hand, Junko felt that it was real. At that moment, she couldn't stop her tears from rushing out. The king finally came to see her. You guys talk first, I'll take little Xian away first. Hu Yen, who was standing on the side, showed a very kind look, then reached out and gently took Yang Xian, then turned and went to the bedroom where little Yang Xian was resting. Just outside the bedroom, Hu Yan's head maid, little Qing, was standing outside with some other maids, looking around vigilantly. Although they didn't know why the king and consort wanted to visit the 8th Madam's bedroom in the middle of the night, they knew that what happened tonight couldn't be known to outsiders. Otherwise, there wouldn't be Long Wei hiding in the dark outside the bedroom. Fortunately, the 8th Madam had lost her power, so all the maids had gone to rest, and no one was waiting in front of her. As long as some ecstasy powder was blown into the room of these maids, they would be able to sleep until dawn, which saved a lot of trouble. On the side of the bed, Yang Chendong was hugging Junko, and the two were sitting quietly. After gradually adapting to the temperature of Yang Chendong's body, Junko knew that she had to say something. Otherwise she was really worried that if she didn't say something, there would be no chance for her to say it. King, about ninja? Well, don't say it, I already know, this matter can't have anything to do with you, this king has already known it. But now I still need your cooperation, I will leave before dawn, and then everything will be the same as yesterday. You also need to calm down for a while. Are you willing to cooperate with me? By the way, Tomiko and the others are living very well. They are now in a very safe place, you can rest assured. After this matter, they will come back and serve you again. The amount of information in these words was a bit too much. Junko didn't understand it for a while. But no matter what, she was still the princess of the royal family. After a while, she digested most of it. Although Junko didn't know what was going on, she knew that this was a trap, and she was the bait. Thinking that she could do something for Yang Chendong, no matter how big the training was, it was not a big deal. Junko immediately said, King, please rest assured, Junko has no complaints, and will cooperate well. Haha, Junko is the girl who has the best view of the overall situation. Well, it's already late, can we rest? Yang Hodong first praised with a smile, then said with a hint of temptation in his voice. Yang Chendong knew that if he didn't do something, he wouldn't be able to completely eliminate the estrangement in Junko's heart. So, he decided to sleep with Junko. Ah! Hearing this, Junko's eyes were full of affection, and her face was red. She wanted to say, "Didn't King just come out from the madam's place?" But thinking of Yang Chendong's strong body, she didn't say anything, but just nodded shyly. Ha ha! With laughter, Yang Chendong and Junko slowly fell down. Then, the gauze was slowly put down. What a garden full of spring! 12,000 words are omitted here. In a courtyard with 4 entrances outside the palace. The sky slowly brightened. The servant Yang Wu put on his clothes and walked into the courtyard. After practicing a set of martial arts, Cui Xiao came out of the room. Her face was flushed, and it was obvious that she was full. She was holding a basin of warm water in front of Yang Wu. "Brother Wu, you must be sweating, come, wash your face." Looking at the towel handed by Cui Xiao, Yang Wu smiled, then pinched her flushed face, and took the towel and began to wipe his face. While Yang Wu was wiping his face, Cui Xiao asked casually, "Brother Wu, the 6th young master is back, should I continue to work at the madam's place?" Ha! Suddenly putting down the towel, Yang Wu's face was a little cold. "Xiao, I'll warn you again, you can only be called king, you can't even call him king. How can you call him the 6th young master?" In the entire Xianxia, except for a few servants who can call Yang Chendong young master, those who are closer to him can call him the 6th young master, and those who are farther away can call him king, but most people have to call him king. This is the rule. No one can question or break the rule. Yang Wu's face changed, and Cui Xiao was also shocked. Then she whispered, "Yes, Xiao overstepped." Seeing that Cui Xiao's attitude was good, Yang Wu decided to let her go. Then he said, "The young master is back, but he didn't go to see the 8th madam, so you should do what you should do. But remember, master and servant, no matter whether the 8th madam is guilty or not, only the young master can make the decision. As servants, we can't do anything that goes against the master, otherwise the consequences will be very serious, understand?" "Yes, Xiao understands." Cui Xiao quickly agreed. "Well, it's getting late. You should go back to the palace. Although our relationship is here, and others won't say anything publicly, we still have to be self-disciplined." Chapter 16:24. "Yes, I'll go back to the palace now." Cui Xiao quickly bowed and then stepped out of the small courtyard. After leaving the small courtyard, she suddenly looked back and said in her heart, "When you were sleeping with me, you were so anxious. Now that you're done, you want me to go back and serve others. Humph, Yang Wu, you're just like this. Just wait. Wait until my master is promoted. At that time, I will definitely trample you under my feet and see your face." With a trace of anger, Cui Xiao returned to the palace and went to the 8th madam's bedroom. Along the way, the maids who saw her hurriedly saluted, which made her involuntarily raise her head. No matter what, she was half the master here, which gave her a sense of superiority. Until she walked into the bedroom, she saw Junko sitting in front of the mirror and dressing up. In particular, she noticed that Junko's mental state was very good, and she seemed to have a smile on her face. This made Cui Xiao even more puzzled. She could only snort and turn around to find a room to catch up on her sleep. Here, Cui Xiao was half the master. No one could control what she wanted to do. What Cui Xiao didn't know was that as soon as she left, Yang Lu came to Yang Wu's small courtyard. As Yang Chendong's servants, after the young master returned, they had to go together to greet him and wait for orders. There were only 5 of them in the Yang family. Even if Tiger's mane was included, there were only 6 people. It was because they were talented that they showed their noble status. But this kind of nobility was only in front of others. In front of Yang Chendong, they were still servants. "You're here, then let's go." Yang Wu saw Yang Lu appear and smiled. "Let's go, 5th brother." Yang Lu also smiled. But what he didn't notice was the forced and painful smile in Yang Wu's eyes. As the guard of Crimson City, Yang Wu naturally had his strengths to be chosen here. Although no one said anything, he had a bad feeling about this. Yang Chendong woke up early in the morning and had breakfast in Hu Yan's princess consort's palace. He even held little Yang Lin and fed her a few mouthfuls of food before leaving with a satisfied laugh. When he saw that Beta Persei, Yang Wu and Yang Lu were already standing in the courtyard waiting for him, he waved his hand. "Let's go to the city lord's mansion." The so-called City Lord's mansion had already become a 9-story building. However, the real office space was only on the bottom 8 floors. The 9th floor was reserved for Yang Chendong. This was what the ancients called the 9 and 5 Supremes. Not everyone could use the 9th floor. Outside the City Lord's mansion, Yu Qian, who had already received the news, was waiting here with Luan Shaochen and the others. Each of them had a look of anticipation on their faces. Because according to the past habit, every time the 6th young master appeared here, he would give very important pointers. Often, after these pointers became reality, the strength of the entire Xianxia would unknowingly rise to a new level. Everyone was waiting for Yang Chendong to appear and for his new instructions. This time, Yang Chendong did indeed have new instructions, and that was to establish a cabinet. Xianxia was getting stronger and stronger. His territory was getting bigger and bigger, and there were more and more things to do. It was already insufficient to rely on the City Lord's mansion to solve all the problems, so the cabinet came into being. They would help share some of the important things and make important decisions. Unlike the cabinet system of the Great Ming Dynasty, Xiangshia's cabinet had a total of 9 people. Usually, everyone was in charge of something. Once there was a problem that could not be solved, the 9 people would vote according to the principle of the minority obeying the majority to make the final decision. If there was an abstention vote, and the result was an equal vote, then Yang Chendong would make the decision. Most of the time, Yang Chendong would not interfere too much with the cabinet's affairs. In order to avoid a situation where the cabinet had too much control, the management of the military was not within the scope of internal discussion. The military was independent, and even the logistics were the same. This was the only way to ensure that even if the cabinet was controlled by someone else in the future, the military would still be in the hands of the royal family. This would ensure that the royal family could turn the situation around, and it would be as easy as flipping a hand. Yang Chendong sat in the large conference room of the City Lord's mansion. When he announced this decision face to face, the officials below were silent. Many of them showed excitement in their eyes. In fact, this was understandable. When Yang Chendong was not there, the final decision of Xia's affairs was in the hands of the City Lord's mansion, which was equivalent to being in the hands of the City Lord. Yu Qian was worthy of being the boss. However, because this person was wholeheartedly impartial and never showed favoritism, there were many things that people wanted to intervene in, but they could not have the right to speak. Now, the cabinet system was implemented, which was equivalent to decentralizing the power in Yu Qian's hands. So, they had more opportunities to intervene in government affairs. Of course, everyone was happy. Now, these people were thinking about who would be the first batch of people to enter the cabinet. Naturally, the low-ranking people did not think much about it, but they hoped that the officials they were familiar with could enter the cabinet. This was equivalent to having a strong backer. Among the people present, the one who was most disappointed was Luan Shaochen. As the first deputy city lord, he was going to take over from City Lord Yu Qian, but now that the cabinet system was introduced, his power would be greatly dispersed. For a moment, Luan Shaochen couldn't help but think of his private statement on the matter of the 8th madam. Was it because of this that it provoked the dissatisfaction of the 6th young master, so the cabinet system was introduced? This was Luan Shaochen's thinking too much. Yang Chendong had thought about the cabinet system for a long time. He was using the political system of later generations as a reference. And now, he thought that the time was ripe to establish a cabinet. As for the previous system of the City Lord's mansion, it was because Yu Qian was the City Lord. Yang Chendong was very assured of this person's ability and integrity. But now it was different. Yu Qian was old and could not do everything by himself. Luan Xiaoli was too young and could be easily used by people with ulterior motives. Now was the time to introduce the cabinet system. Not only that, the appearance of the cabinet system was also a great advantage for the next conquest of the North and South Ming dynasty. It was because of this that today's meeting was held. Not to mention that Luan Shaochen was a little disappointed. Yu Qian, on the other hand, was indifferent. Yu Qian was a person with a high evaluation in history. There was a natural reason for that. This was a person who truly cared about the people. In his opinion, as long as the people lived a prosperous life, it was the top priority. As for whether he would offend anyone in the process, it was not a problem that he needed to consider. Now, the emergence of the cabinet system represented a more mature sign of Xianxia. How could he refuse? Not to mention that he also knew that he was old and could not stay in the position of the City Lord's mansion for long. So naturally, There was no sense of loss. Then again, no matter what the people below thought, this matter was decided by Yang Chendong, so it was useless for others to doubt it. This was not a democratic era, but a period of imperial power. As the king and founder of the Yang faction, as long as Yang Chendong decided on something, the others would have to obey his orders. Well, next, I will announce the first batch of people to join the cabinet. Seeing that the discussion below gradually became quiet, Yang Chendong reached out and took a piece of paper with a list of names recorded on it. In an instant, the meeting became quiet. At this moment, it was most appropriate to describe it as a pin-drop silence. In the quiet big conference room, only Yang Chendong's unusually calm voice sounded. Cabinet Leader Yu Qian. The first name was read out, but it did not cause any waves because everyone thought that this was a normal thing. Next, Yang Chendong paused and continued to read, Luan Xiaochen. Luan Xiaochen, who was sitting there and still a little nervous, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief after hearing his name. He was really a little nervous because he was worried that his previous actions had caused the dissatisfaction of the sixth young master. If so, even if he was not a cabinet member, it was normal. If that was the case, it meant that he was completely removed from the ranks of the high-level cadres. The appearance of Luan Xiaochen's name did not cause any surprise. After all, everyone could see it. Bugnam of Gojoseon has been deliberately training his brother-in-law. In addition, he was the first deputy city lord, the first person after Yu Qian. It was normal for him to appear on the list. After Luan Xiaochen, Yang Chendong opened his mouth and read out the third name. Shen Yu. As soon as this name came out, it was no longer quiet. There were more or less whispers and discussions. Shan Yu, chief of the supervision department. In the many years since he took office, he has made contributions, but they were not very big. The main thing was that he had enough qualifications. This person joined the Xianxia with Yu Qian. It has been more than 10 years. It was precisely because of his seniority that although the people below had some discussions, no one would say anything more. On the contrary, Shen Yu himself was very excited at this moment. After his name was called, he got up and walked straight to the rostrum like Yu Qian and Luan Xiaochen. Shen Yu's age was not young. He was only 3 years younger than Yu Qian. But who says that you don't have ambition when you're old? It was good to be able to exert their remaining energy. Presumably, it was not only Shen Yu who thought this way. Many old chiefs of various departments would also think this way. Even in the present day, this kind of thinking was still mainstream. After Shen Yu, Yang Chendong called out Wu Qian's name. Wu Qian, chief of the anti-corruption department. His name and his name could be said to complement each other. Wu Qian really had no money. Moreover, this person was impartial, as if Bao Gong had been reborn. For the sake of his work, he even sent his wife and assistant to prison. Such a person was like an insurmountable mountain to those officials who had ulterior motives. His addition to the cabinet also made many people's hearts ache. With this point, they had to put away any ulterior motives they had before. Chapter 1625. Wu Qian, whose name was called, didn't have any excitement. He stood up indifferently. As far as he was concerned, whether he joined the cabinet or not, he would still continue to work. It was just that joining the cabinet meant that Yang Chendong trusted him more, which made him a little excited. Just like Yu Qian, the longer he followed Yang Chendong, the more he saw Xia's rapid changes, and the more he was influenced by Yang Chendong's personality. To be recognized by someone he admired was a happy thing no matter how he looked at it. After Wu Qian, Yang Chendong called the fifth name, Long Tainan. This time, the discussion below was even louder, and it couldn't be hidden. Long Tainan was just the chief of public security. To put it bluntly, he was just a person who maintained social security. How could he join the cabinet? In terms of qualifications, he was very shallow. Even when he was qualified to be the chief of public security, many people were skeptical. But now, he actually became the first batch of members to join the cabinet. This greatly exceeded everyone's expectations. But then everyone remembered that Long Tianan's wife was Bugnam of Gojoseon's seventh sister, and he had nepotism. For a time, everyone was relieved. Some people even thought that if Long Tainan could enter the cabinet with his qualifications, did that mean that they also had a chance? For a time, Many chiefs of other departments, even the chiefs of important departments, had a look of expectation on their faces. They hoped that the next person to be called would be them. Long Tainan stood up. At this moment, he also had a look of disbelief. It wasn't until he saw Yang Chendong gently nod to him that he knew that everything was true. He immediately took out the style of a soldier and strode straight to the rostrum. In the end, even under the influence of Yang Chendong, Xianxia had nothing to do with the Great Ming in many aspects. But Xianxia's development time was still too short, and it was inevitable that he would be influenced by Confucianism. In that era where culture was emphasized, it was really something that many people didn't even dare to imagine that a martial artist like Long Tainan would enter the cabinet. If it wasn't for Yang Chendong's words, even if it was announced by City Lord Yu Qian, his subordinates would have objected loudly. It could be said that it was Yang Chendong who had used his influence to decide this matter. After all, without Yang Chendong, there wouldn't be Xianxia today. Without the 5-star army, there wouldn't be such a beautiful life. After reading 5 names in a row, Yang Chendong put down the paper in his hand. Then, he glanced at the participants. For a moment, those who were under his gaze couldn't help but straighten their bodies. It was as if they were saying, "Pay attention to me, pay attention to me, I'm also very capable." But unfortunately, after looking around, Yang Chendong said, "For the time being, there are only 5 people in the cabinet. As for the other 4, I still need to consider it. But as long as you have the ability, you will have such an opportunity. Not only that, even if the officials of the Great Ming Dynasty are interested, they will also have such an opportunity." What? This sentence was like throwing a large stone into a calm pool, instantly causing everyone to exclaim in surprise. The officials of the Great Ming Dynasty can also enter the cabinet? Doesn't this mean that the competition is too strong? Yang Chendong saw this reaction, and he was happy. This was the result he wanted. He believed that it wouldn't take long for this matter to spread to the imperial court of the Great Ming Dynasty, and it would definitely cause a lot of waves. This was the reason why he built the cabinet at this time. It was to dig a big hole for the Great Ming Dynasty. As long as there were empty seats, he wouldn't have to worry about no one jumping into it. Quiet down. Seeing that everyone was discussing for a while, Yang Chendong reached out and pressed down. Suddenly, there was silence. It's still the same sentence. As long as everyone has the ability, you don't have to worry about not being discovered. Everyone will have a chance to enter the cabinet because the members of the cabinet will change every 3 to 5 years if there are no major accidents. There will be newcomers and there will also be people who leave. 3 to 5 years. This was what Yang Chendong decided after thinking for a long time. If it wasn't fixed, it would only show how terrifying the authority of the king was. This way, he wouldn't have to worry about the people below fighting for power or playing tricks with him. In fact, if one looked carefully at the 5 people who were chosen, there were a lot of things to pay attention to. Needless to say, if Yu Qian didn't enter the cabinet, the others wouldn't have the qualifications to enter the cabinet. Letting him become the head of the cabinet was also a kind of affirmation of his previous work. When he was old, he would naturally retire. At that time, it would be the time for his son to take over the position. The son would inherit the father's business and have 2 cabinet elders. This was enough glory. There were also Shen Yu and Wu Qian. One was the chief of the Ministry of Supervision and the other was the chief of the Ministry of Anti-Corruption. This was enough to show the importance that Yang Chendong attached to the supervision of officials. Presumably, if these 2 people joined the cabinet, who would dare to interfere, they would definitely be severely punished. Moreover, because Yu Qian and Shen Yu were officials from the Great Ming Dynasty, not only were they used for more than 10 years, but they also entered the cabinet. With this, it was equivalent to giving the other officials of the Great Ming Dynasty a lesson. Once the 5-star army arrived at the city gates, they would know what to do. As for the last 2, Luan Shaochen and Long Tainan, one was his uncle, and the other was his brother-in-law. They were equivalent to family. When they were there, when the cabinet made decisions, it would definitely be based on Yang Chendong's will. At least it would not be out of control. In particular, when Long Tainan entered the cabinet, it also proved that Xianxia's focus was beginning to lean towards the side of local law and order. With the continuous creation of new areas, how to manage them became the most important thing. The above were Yang Chendong's considerations. All aspects could be considered to have been taken care of. After the meeting, except for the 5 members of the cabinet, everyone else left. After there were no outsiders, Yang Chendong first congratulated the 5 people one by one. Then he said, 5 cabinet elders, now that Xianxia is growing stronger, the pressure and responsibility on you is also increasing. Not only do you have to take care of the things in your hands, but you also need to look further. For example, the South Ming Baiming, and the West where the Navy is fighting. Since you are now cabinet elders, the power in your hands is many times greater than before. Every time you make a decision, you have to be very careful. You have to consider all kinds of problems and things. Not to say that you can't make any mistakes, but you have to strive for perfection. Yes. Including Yu Qian, the 5 of them all respectfully replied yes. Good, since everyone is now cabinet elders, then I still have to give you more responsibilities on top of your original work. For the public, now that the conquest of the Great Ming has begun, it would be best if we can peacefully accept it. For the public, the Great Ming is also a place where people know each other. This matter will require you and Shen Gong to worry about. If there are old friends who contact you, use them if you can. If you can't, you can also appease them. Not long after, perhaps the South Ming will send a delegation to Qiqian City to study. At that time, I will have to trouble the 2 cabinet elders. Yu Qian and Shan Yu went to receive the officials of the Great Ming. This was the most appropriate thing to do. With them as an example, the officials of the Great Ming would know what to choose in their hearts. Yes, my king. Yu Qian and Shan Yu agreed without hesitation. This was originally something that they should do. Yang Chendong nodded in satisfaction. Then he turned his gaze to Wu Qian and said, Wu Qian, Yangxia's territory is getting bigger and bigger, and the officials needed are also getting bigger and bigger. When there are more people, it is inevitable that there will be all kinds of people. In terms of personal integrity, I still need Wu Qian to help me check. This king will still say the same thing. If something happens, investigate it. No matter who they are, who their backer is, or how big their background is, as long as they violate the law, just do whatever you want. There is also the issue of the official's property. Whoever doesn't cooperate will no longer be an official. If you want to make a name for yourself, you want to reap benefits, and you want to have power, all the good things in the world can be yours. Good. This official will remember the king's words. Wu Qian revealed a rare smile. He also felt that the pace of Yangxia's expansion was a bit fast, and there were already signs of problems among the officials. He was thinking about whether he should make a heavy hand to clean up the officials. Now, Yang Chendong gave him an imperial sword. Especially when the property disclosure policy came out, if someone's family had more money than their original income, it would be clear at a glance. If they couldn't clearly state the source of the property, it would be easier to deal with it. So, in addition to his identity as a cabinet elder, there shouldn't be any big problems when it comes to work. Cabinet Elder Long, the problem of public security is the fundamental problem of a country. As long as the country is well governed, the people can put all their energy into building the country. Therefore, the public security headquarters should not only increase the intensity of patrolling, but also send outstanding cadres to some of the new Yangxia's territories to do in-depth ideological work with the people. Let them check each other and expose the people who have problems. They should strive to strangle the crimes in the cradle, so that the losses can be reduced. Also, there are bandits and anti-Yangxia forces in some places. Don't be polite to these people. Contact the local garrison and make a thorough plan to eliminate them in one fell swoop. Don't be soft-hearted. Understood, 6th young master, please rest assured. Long Tainan put down the pen in his hand, stood up, and straightened his body. Finally, it was Luan Xiaochun's turn. Yang Chendong handed over the work of propaganda and education to him. Remember, propaganda is very important, especially in an era where people follow the herd. If this work is done well, it can make the society more stable and the people more motivated. Otherwise, there will be a lot of chaos. There is also the issue of education. You must build more schools, and the Han people must learn to read. Let them know what is loyalty and what is treachery, and better distinguish between right and wrong. Write a report on how much money you need later. Okay, 6th young master, I will go back and have a good talk with the people from the publicity department and the education department. I will definitely do this well. Luan Xiaochun also quickly expressed his attitude. Luan Xiaochun was also very satisfied with managing these 2 major tasks. This proved that his words still had a lot of weight, and Yang Chendong still thought highly of him. When it came to work, he didn't have any worries. Brothers, Longzi's new book, Duke Ferocious, is already a little fat. You can go and slaughter it. Hee. New book, Duke Ferocious. Please recommend, bookmark, click. During the new book period, please support, Longzi thanks. Chapter 1626. With the establishment of a cabinet and the appointment of 5 elders, the news quickly spread throughout the streets of Xianxia City. After Yang Chendong listened to some work reports in the city lord's mansion, he left and returned to the palace. Because of Yang Chendong's return to the palace, Yang Lu had some free time and returned to his residence in Xianxia City. The moment he entered the residence, the housekeeper, Yang Ying, welcomed him. Master, you've had a hard day. Hee. It's all right. Yang Lu forced a smile and said darkly. If there's anything, let's talk in the secret room. Very quickly, Yang Lu sat on a familiar chair in the secret room, drinking tea and listening to Yang Ying's report. Master, Old Yuan has sent a message. He said that we are going to check his accounts. He is very nervous and asked when we will take action. I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on for long. After Yang Lu sat down, Yang Ying told him the news he had just received. He has the guts to take the money but doesn't have the guts to face the questioning? He's really a piece of trash. I shouldn't have worked with him. Yang Lu said. Yang Ying also nodded in agreement, but he still continued. It's just that old Yuan knows too much, he can't get off the ship now. He also said. What did he say? Yang Lu asked unhappily. He also said that he has evidence of us. If we don't save him, we'll just die together. Yang Ying thought for a while and gritted his teeth. How dare he? As if someone had stepped on his tail, Yang Lu jumped up all of a sudden. He never thought that there would be a day when he would be threatened. Then send someone to kill him. But if he really has evidence, he must have a backup plan. If he dies, I'm afraid our matter will be exposed. Yang Ying replied worriedly. Yang Lu's originally annoyed expression immediately disappeared. That's right, how could someone like old Yuan not have a backup plan? If he really wanted to have a falling out, the other party would definitely die, and he probably wouldn't be able to escape. After pondering for a moment, Yang Lu sighed and said, Then let's keep him alive for now. Send someone to tell White Fox to keep this Yuan guy in check. It won't be too late to deal with him after the dust has settled on our side. The White Fox that Yang Lu was talking about was the CIA's director in charge of the southern Ming area. As mentioned before, the CIA was organized by Yang Chendong's 7th wife, Su Man-er. At first, he just wanted to give it a try. After all the information came from the Security Bureau. Not only could there be problems, but it was also incomplete. Since ancient times, the way of checks and balances had always been one of the methods that the Wuxia emperors had been most willing to use. As such, the CIA took advantage of the situation to rise. Moreover, because of the creator, Su Man-er, the management of the CIA was dominated by women. This was to distinguish them from the Security Bureau and also to fill in the gaps. After all, most of the time, women's hearts were more meticulous, and they would do things more comprehensively. Because of this, Xianxia's sources of information had always been very accurate. The final judgment would only be made after the final report from the Comprehensive Security Bureau and the CIA. For example, when Yang Lu was sent to Southern Ming to manage the intelligence work of the Security Bureau, he naturally couldn't avoid dealing with White Fox. The ambitious Yang Lu's first thought was to get rid of the White Fox, and it was not difficult to do so. The CIA was only good at gathering information, but in terms of hands-on ability, or in other words, operational strength, they were far from the CIA. But then, Yang Lu considered that even if he killed White Fox, the CIA would send more people. Perhaps Black Fox and Flower Fox would be involved as well. In the end, he gave up on the idea of killing White Fox and changed it to temptation. To be more specific, it was temptation. Yang Lu used himself as bait and put on a posture of pursuing White Fox. It didn't take long for him to successfully turn her into one of his own. Who was Yang Lu? He was one of the 5 servants around Yang Chendong. His hidden power was so great that few people in Xianxia could compare. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that as long as these family retainers didn't commit a crime of rebellion, Even if they made a mistake, their lives wouldn't be in danger. This was because the other family retainers wouldn't watch their good brothers get killed. In other words, Yonglu was a big tree. Once you relied on him, it was equivalent to having no worries for the rest of your life. White Fox was a woman, and she would grow old. Now she was in a high position, but one day, she would retire because of age. There had to be a place for her to go. Yonglu was undoubtedly the best backer and candidate in her eyes, and the two could be said to hit it off. After sleeping with White Fox, Yonglu revealed his ambition little by little. At first, it scared White Fox, but she was already on the boat, and now she couldn't get off. Moreover, God knew if Yonglu would be in trouble if she exposed the matter. But one thing was for sure, and that was that she would definitely be in trouble. She couldn't compare to Yonglu's brothers who had gone through life and death to plead for him. In the end, White Fox also became one of Yonglu's subordinates. After the Security Bureau and the CIA were under his control, Yonglu didn't have any scruples when doing things in southern Ming. Soon, he colluded with the local tycoon Yuan Qian, who was the old Yuan they just mentioned, and started a smuggling business. The goods produced by Xianxia every year were extremely popular. Many merchants hated that they received too little, or else they would have earned more. Yuan Qian was one of them. Among the merchants, Yuan Qian wasn't the most powerful, but he was sufficiently obedient. He became Yonglu's spokesperson. With Yonglu's name, it was naturally not a problem for him to obtain more goods from Crimson City. As such, the Yuan clan stood out from the crowd of merchants, and he would only receive 10% of the profits. The remaining 90% would go to Yonglu. Again, Yonglu's plan was huge. He needed a lot of money, and he needed to bribe a lot of people to do things for him. Slowly, he took away 5% of Yuan Qian's profits, leaving him with only 5% of the profits. Logically speaking, this wasn't a small amount. However, the problem was that everyone knew that Yuan Qian had connections, and many poor relatives came knocking on his door. In order to not lose face in front of others, Yuan Qian could only puff himself up at his own cost. Slowly, many officials in southern Ming had their eyes on him, and the amount they wanted was not a small amount. Yuan Qian finally couldn't take it anymore. Thinking of the things he had done for Yonglu, he demanded an exorbitant price. Not only did he want back the 5% that was taken away from him, he also wanted an additional 10%, which was a total of 20% of the profits. How could Yonglu agree to this? The conflict between the two sides started to appear, and this was what Yang Ying reported. Yonglu was quite relieved to leave the matter to White Fox. Not only did this woman have good looks, but she was also very capable. Otherwise, she wouldn't have become the director of the CIA in southern Ming. He was just a small merchant, and he was confident that he could control him. Yonglu also knew that there was a problem, and he couldn't avoid it forever, so he had to hurry up. He couldn't help but look at Yang Ying and said, "Go to Fourth Master Yang Yang's place and tell him this." Yonglu returned to Crimson City and started to get busy. Establishing the cabinet was just one of the countless things he had to do. Next, he went to the People's Hero Monument and brought the 5 cabinet members to pay their respects. This was also the first time the 5 cabinet members made a public appearance, and it was to tell everyone that the cabinet was important and had great power. Next, Yang Chendong started to patrol the factories one by one. In terms of professional ability, Yang Chendong naturally couldn't compare to professionals. However, he had foresight and knowledge that exceeded this world by a few hundred years. Therefore, he either didn't speak, or he could often add the finishing touch, making people feel enlightened. Crimson City was huge, and there were many factories. If Yang Chendong wanted to visit all the large factories and departments, it would take a few months. During this time, the negotiations between Xianxia and Southern Ming finally came to a conclusion. Facing the covetous eyes of the 5-star army, Southern Ming, who wasn't prepared, finally chose to compromise. After Ma Dali and Xie Chong quarreled and argued, all the way until the 10th month of 1467. After more than 3 months of negotiations, Southern Ming finally made a lot of concessions. For example, they allowed Yang Xie to open a bank in Southern Ming, open a shop, and allow him to build a port in Fuzhou and other places near the sea. Ma Dali also represented Bugnam of Gojoseon and said that Yang Xie and Southern Ming would continue to be friends for generations. In the future, Yang Xie would continue to provide food to Southern Ming, and the price wouldn't increase by 50%, but only by 20%, etc. Just like that, the relationship between the two sides went from being at daggers drawn to the current ambiguous relationship. This was really unexpected. After Ma Dali finished the final negotiations, he took a ship back to Crimson City and reported to Yang Chendong. In the political affairs hall of the palace, Yang Chendong said that he had worked hard and that things were done well. This made Ma Dali smile. As if he could see that Yang Chendong was in a good mood, Ma Dali took the opportunity to ask his question. Sixth young master, the current situation is that our Xianxia is very strong, and the 5-star army has recovered their fighting strength after 3 months of rest. Why do you still want to negotiate with Southern Ming? Ma Dali wasn't the only one who wanted to ask this question. Many officials were also filled with doubts. This was because according to Yang Chendong's style of doing things, he had never negotiated with other countries, regions, or powers. If there was a disagreement, he would start a war. Sometimes, he didn't even need an excuse. Yang Chendong knew that it was time to answer this question. Even if he didn't give an answer today, there would still be people who would ask tomorrow. In order to solve the problem once and for all, he said, war stems from politics, and politics is higher than war. Whether a war can be won or not, it can't be measured purely from a military perspective. It also needs to be combined with political factors. Chapter 1627. For example, let's attack the Southern Ming Empire. We can definitely win, but how much will we have to pay? You have to know that in the eyes of many Han people, the Great Ming Empire is still orthodox. Even if they are divided into the Northern and Southern Ming Empires, it is still the same. If the people do not lose their minds, it is not wise to attack rashly. Furthermore, if we take over the Southern Ming Empire by force, not to mention what kind of resistance we will encounter, the Southern Ming Empire will not give up easily. Their destructive power is obvious. As such, if we want to recover and rebuild, we will need to invest a large amount of manpower and resources. As for these, we are not ready yet. This is also the reason why we are negotiating first. Yang Chendong answered Ma Dali's question seriously this time. This caused the other party to continuously nod his head, as if he had thought of something. Sixth young master, in other words, negotiations are only a method. In the end we might use force? It is not a possibility, but we will definitely use force. Some people are like this. If you only show off your muscles, they will not be afraid and will think that it is just for show. As long as you place a large blade on their neck and let them feel the coldness, they will truly be afraid and lower their heads. Thus, once the Xianxia has made all the preparations and has enough reasons to convince the world, they will make their move. Speaking to here, Yang Chendong's eyes flashed with a complicated expression, but he quickly became firm again. As for the reasons needed, someone should be sending it to us soon. Ma Dali naturally did not understand the deeper meaning of Yang Chendong's words. As a qualified official, he had to know what he should know and what he should not inquire about. Otherwise, he would only bring trouble to himself. Yes, sixth young master, this official understands. That's right, before Minister Xie Chong left, he said that the Southern Ming Empire's observation team will soon arrive at Crimson City. Do you think this is a method to attack them? Of course. Yang Chendong nodded and gave an affirmative answer. This observation group will be led by your Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You must entertain them well. They are the best propaganda tool. When they return to the Southern Ming dynasty, they will definitely bring us many unexpected surprises. Yang Chendong grew up in the 80s and 90s, and there was a very popular saying that the moon in foreign countries was rounder than in China. Just because of this slogan, who knew how many capable and talented people racked their brains to go abroad? Even if it was to wash dishes or do small jobs there, they were unwilling to return to their motherland. This time, in the eyes of many people in the Southern Ming Empire, Crimson City was a foreign country. It was believed that the saying that the moon in Crimson City was rounder than the moon in the Southern Ming Empire would soon become popular. There's an old saying that goes, guarding the mouths of the people is more dangerous than guarding the rivers. As long as this observation group dared to come, Yang Chendong would let this observation group become Xia's lobbyists in the Southern Ming dynasty. At that time, the news would spread from 1 to 10, and from 10 to 100, and from 100 to 1,000. There would be a huge problem within the Southern Ming Empire, And this would be the best support for the next attack against the Southern Ming Empire. Just as Yang Chendong and Ma Dali were discussing the matter of the observation group. In the capital of the Southern Ming Empire, Xie Chong had also rushed back, covered in dust. In the palace hall, Xie Chong handed up a memorial. It was the final result of the negotiations with Ma Dali. Although there were many humiliating terms in it that could be said to be humiliating, at least the 5-star army was cut off. For the Southern Ming Empire, this was already considered a good result. Of course, these terms were not equal, and Zhu Qizhen was not foolish enough to make it public. That would be slapping himself and his officials' faces. Thus, after he received the memorial, he changed the topic. My beloved officials, Xianxia has only been developing for a little more than 10 years. However, they have such powerful strength. Why is that? This time, without waiting for Zhu Qizhen to call out names, the officials below automatically stood up. The person leading them was the Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhua. This person was also old and wanted to retire, but in the end, he was urged to stay by Zhu Qizhen. It was not because of anything else, but because there was no one more suitable for this position in the Southern Ming Empire than Wang Zhua. Money and provisions were important, and it was not reassuring to leave it to others. Wang Zhua stood up and replied, Your Majesty, this subject has always heard that Xianxia's Crimson City's commerce and industry are very developed. It is because of this that they were able to earn a large amount of money in a very short period of time. This must be the foundation of Xianxia's strength. That's right. Although Zhu Qizhen did not want this result, he had to admit that this result was very correct. Thus, he nodded. Minister Wang's words are very true. Xianxia's strength is greater than theirs. They have a strong foundation of money, and their financial resources are very sufficient. This is the reason why they were able to establish such a powerful army. Here comes the problem. What they can do, we can do as well. This time, Minister Xie put in a lot of effort to help us get an observation team. This emperor thinks that we should all go to Crimson City and take a look. We can learn from the enemy and subdue them. Zhu Qizhen credited the matter of the observation group to Xie Chong. In fact, it was Yang Chendong who suggested it. This was the emperor's power play. If it was Yang Chendong who invited everyone, they would only be grateful to Yang Chendong. But if Zhu Qizhen said that he fought for it, then everyone would be grateful to him. As soon as he said this, the officials below began to discuss. The officials in this era did not have many exciting lives. If they did, they would just gather together to watch singing and dancing and drink wine. As for climbing mountains and swimming, only those officials who were not successful could do that. Just like today's officials in the main hall, which one of them did not prepare for court at the 5th watch and enter court at the 6th watch? They woke up so early every day, and some of them did not even have enough time to sleep, yet they still wanted to go and take a look? It was beautiful. But now, there was such an opportunity to go out and take a look. It was a trip at public expense. Previously, there was news that Yang Xie would pay for the entire observation group. This was naturally Yang Chendong's own initiative, because he still hoped that these people would become his propagandists and promote Yang Xie's power. Naturally, when Zhu Qizhen said this, it was because he wanted Minister Xie Chong to fight for it. Regardless of the reason to be able to travel at public expense, it was said that Crimson City was very advanced, and there were many good things there, many of which could not be bought in the capital of the Southern Ming dynasty. Just based on this point, who would not be willing? For a time, many officials in the Imperial court were eager to give it a try. They were all thinking about signing up as soon as possible after the Imperial court ended. They did not want to be unable to sign up just because the quota was full. That would be too much of a pity. Zhu Qizhen agreed in principle that everyone wanted to go to Crimson City to take a look. Firstly, he wanted to let these people see how Crimson City developed and learn from it. Even if he couldn't learn the essence of it, it would still be beneficial to imitate it and learn it. Secondly, he wanted these officials to feel a sense of urgency. Looking at the development of Crimson City and then looking at themselves, wouldn't they feel guilty? Shouldn't I work hard after coming back? Not only that, Zhu Qizhen himself also wanted to go and take a look. Of course, it was only a thought. He did not have the courage. What if he went to Crimson City and was detained? He definitely did not have Yang Chendong's strength and courage to bring 500 black cavalry and rush into southern Cloud Manor, which had tens of thousands of soldiers from 3 provinces. After the court session ended, the officials who went to the Ministry of Rights to register quickly formed a long line. This made the host, Minister Xiecheng, happy but also worried. He was happy because there were so many people going. This made him worry that no one would be interested in going and that the southern Ming dynasty would lose face. However, he was worried because there were too many officials. Would Xianxia agree? Sir, what should we do? Zhou Ziang came to Xiecheng's side and asked softly. Clearly, this lively scene was far beyond his expectations. How about this? Quickly go to Xianxia's bank in the capital and see if you can contact Bugnam of Gojoseon through them. Inform them about our situation and ask them how many people they can allow in the observation group. Okay, this official will go now. Zhou Ziang did not dare to delay and ran out of the Ministry of Rights Yamen. Xianxia's bank in the capital had existed for a long time. This bank had always been in charge of the southern Ming dynasty's grain transfers. As the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights, Zhou Ziang had been here a few times and quickly found this place. He met the manager in charge and explained the situation. The manager was straightforward. He knew that this was a serious matter and hurriedly used the bank's radio station to report to the Crimson City cabinet. Fortunately, he did not have enough authority. Otherwise, he would have directly reported to Bugnam of Gojoseon Palace. Originally, Zhou Ziang thought that it would take a long time to get the news. Unexpectedly, in less than an hour, the manager came out and gave Zhou Ziang 4 big words. There is no limit. When Yang Chendong knew that there were many officials in the southern Ming dynasty, he was overjoyed. Why would he limit the number of people? If all the southern Ming dynasty officials came to Crimson City, he could even force them to stay. This way, the southern Ming dynasty would become an empty shell. There would be no need to fight any wars. Of course, this was just a thought. Ingzong Zhu Qizhen would not be so naive. After knowing that there was no limit, Zhou Ziang happily turned and ran. When he returned to the Ministry of Rights Yamen and reported the matter to Minister Xiecheng, he was overjoyed. This was because when Zhou Ziang was away, who knew how many people used their connections to find him and asked for a spot in the observation group. However, he did not know what Bugnam of Gojoseon's bottom line was. However, if he did not agree, he would easily offend people. How could he stand in the Imperial court? Chapter 1628. Now, with just one sentence, there was no upper limit, and he could explain to all parties. He immediately said to Zhou Ziang and the officials of the Ministry of Rights, "Everyone spread the news, ha ha ha." Okay. The officials of the Ministry of Rights replied happily. They were not much better than Xiecheng. After a while, except for Zhou Ziang, who was not in his position, everyone else received a lot of messages. They were worried about what to do, and now it was all solved. The news quickly spread, and it attracted the unanimous applause of all the officials. Zhu Qizhen also learned of the news. He thought maliciously that he should send more people to eat Yang Chendong dry. However, after thinking about it carefully, he had no choice but to set a rule. That was, each department could only transfer 2/3 of their officials into the observation group. He did not want everyone to leave and there would be no one to handle the government affairs of the Imperial court. As soon as this decree came out, the various departments quickly began to fight. It was all for the half of the quota. Fighting was the norm for the officials of the great Ming dynasty. Sometimes, when there were benefits, they naturally had to fight. This involved whether they could take the opportunity to develop and become stronger. When there was nothing to do, they also had to fight. They had to show their existence. In short, the great Ming dynasty's officials had many means of fighting, and it was so complicated that outsiders could not imagine. Now that there was such a good thing, there would naturally be a lot of fighting, and there would not be a result in a short time. This lasted for nearly 10 days. In the end, the winners entered the observation group, and the losers stayed in the Yamen with a look of despair. The Ministry of Rights quickly received the list of the officials of the observation group from each department. When the result was calculated, it really gave Xiecheng a shock. When he saw the final result, there were more than 3,600 officials. He stood in place as if he had crashed. Xiecheng was very clear that these were the official members of the observation group. According to the result of his negotiation with Ma Dali, each official could bring 3 family members. The usual arrangement was 1 wife and 1 son and 1 daughter. In other words, on the list of 3,600 people, there were 4 times, and there were nearly 15,000 people. Xiechong couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of so many people eating and drinking. He felt that this time, Yang Chendong had smashed his own foot with a stone. Zhu Qizhen also saw this name and couldn't help but chuckle. He then said to Qian Sangbao, "Tell Xiechong to do it this way." At this moment, Zhu Qizhen was still thinking. This time, there were already so many rank 5 officials and above in the capital. If he had known earlier, he would have set the rank of officials to rank 7. That way, the number of officials would at least double. This would put a lot of pressure on Xianxia's finances. But it was just a thought. For officials with too low a rank, even if they went to Crimson City, with their ability, the things they could learn would be limited. Besides, 15,000 people was already a lot. The emperor agreed, and the name list of the 15,000-strong observer group was quickly sent to Yang Chendong. At this time, he was talking with Yu Qian and Shen Yu about the reception of the observer group. When he saw the final number of people, Yu Qian's face couldn't help but darken. Yu Qian was famous for being upright. Seeing the number of people in the observer group, he began to feel some heartache about the financial expenses. Even Shen Yu's face was ugly and a little red. He was embarrassed for the Southern Ming officials. Did they take advantage of the situation? Did they have any shame? On the other hand, Yang Chendong didn't have the slightest displeasure. On the contrary, he was very happy as he muttered to himself, 15,000 people isn't a lot. I don't know what kind of influence it will have by borrowing their mouths." "King, what did you say?" Yu Qian and Shen Yu didn't hear clearly and asked curiously. "Oh, nothing. This king said that they are all children of the great Han dynasty. We have to properly receive them. As the host, we can't be stingy. Pavilion elders, you can first estimate how much silver is needed to entertain the guests." Yang Chendong waved his hand and asked indifferently. Yu Qian and Shen Yu, who had done some work in advance, had prepared 500,000 taels for this matter. This was already not a small amount. However, they didn't expect the number of people in the observer group to be so large. Just the transport ships sent out were more than 10. After all, they had to leave enough space. They couldn't make it crowded after inviting people. Wouldn't that be contrary to their original intention? That 2 million taels? Shen Yu first glanced at Yu Qian, then carefully probed with a question. However, when he saw Yang Chendong frown, he quickly changed his words. 1,500,000 taels is also fine. If it's any less, I'm afraid we won't be able to reach our initial goal. No, it's not that the difference is too big, but it's too little. Since it was us who took the initiative to invite them over, since we had the intention of letting them advertise our 5-star army, how could we be too petty? How about this? We'll give you 5 million taels as the basic cost. If it's not enough, we'll add more. In addition, we'll give you 370,000 yang coins to ensure that every official will receive 100 yang coins to buy the items they want. The yang dollar was the highest currency in the yang system. There was no other currency that could compare to it. In principle, Xianxia coins weren't allowed to be exchanged. There was only one way to obtain them, and that was to receive a certain amount of money from the Xianxia officials. Furthermore, those who had made great contributions to Xianxia would receive additional rewards. With yang coins, one could purchase the items they wanted from the yang department store in Crimson City. The items here only accepted yang coins. In other words, without yang coins, even if you brought out a mountain of gold or silver, you wouldn't be able to buy anything from there. On the other hand, the items in the yang department store couldn't be seen from the outside. For example, there were the best cosmetics, exquisite watches, practical binoculars, high-class Chinese tunic suits and cheongsams with unique numbers printed on them, as well as high heels for women and shiny leather jackets for men. There were also exquisite palm-sized mirrors decorated with beautiful eyes, mini Buddha statues, Guanyin statues, and so on that could be hung in front of one's chest. There were even more high-end items, such as flashlights and sewing machines, bicycles, electric scooters, and so on. In short, they were items that didn't have high production capacity or were laborious to produce. These weren't like ordinary mirrors, glass products, soap, perfume, toothpaste, and other items that could be casually exported. Instead, they were only sold in the yang department store. Many of the newly developed Xianxia products were placed in the yang department store by Yes Hen. They were only waiting for people with yang coins to buy them. Once they had a certain amount of production capacity, they could be exported. Such goods would naturally be taken off the shelves. Because of this, the exchange value of yang coins was very high in the market. Often, 100 taels could be exchanged for 1 yang coin. This was why there was a price but no market. When Yu Qian and Shen Yu heard that Yang Chendong had taken out so many things at once, their eyes widened. They knew that Yang Chendong attached great importance to this matter, but they didn't expect it to be so important that he would take out 370,000 just for yang coins. Every southern Ming official received more than 100 yang coins. It had to be known that even the 2 elders only received 100 yang coins a month after their salary. As for the lower-level officials, they only received a few dozen yang coins. There were even some who received a dozen yang coins a month. This is a big deal. After a round of exclamations, even Yu Qian, who had always treated money like dirt, couldn't help but sigh. Very satisfied with the 2 elders' performance, Yang Chendong chuckled. If that's the case, are the 2 elders confident in completing the task? No problem. Yu Qian and Shen Yu stood up at the same time. At this moment, their hearts were filled with great confidence. Xianxia had made all kinds of preparations. Under the expectations of the southern Ming officials, 10 modified tourist boats arrived at the Suzhou port not far from Nanjing. Here, nearly 15,000 southern Ming officials were waiting. According to the agreement between the 2 sides, the Suzhou port was being built, but there was still some time before it could be used. To get on the boat, one needed to walk over a ladder, so everyone had to be careful when getting on the boat. They were afraid that they would accidentally step on air and hurt their feet. After everyone boarded the tourist boat, the interior space was spacious and the view was excellent. In particular, one of the guest rooms was equipped with a large Simmons soft mattress, which made it extremely comfortable for people to lie on. At this moment, Wang Zhiqing's butt sank into the mattress as he clicked his tongue in wonder. Before this, Wang Zhiqing had already seen the world. As the eldest grandson of the Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhua, what kind of good things had he not seen since he was young? Even though he had been to the Imperial Palace a few times with his grandfather, when he lay on the mattress, he still felt like Granny Lu who had just entered the palace for the first time. Everyone says that Xianxia is very rich and that the progress of society is more civilized and advanced. Could it be that this isn't just a legend? Wang Zhiqing said as he lightly stroked the mattress. Bang! The door suddenly opened from the outside. Then, a girl around the same age as Wang Zhiqing, around 14 or 15 years old, rushed in. As soon as she entered the room, she yelled, "Brother, did you go into the bathroom? What are you doing? Don't you know that you have to knock before entering someone's room? You're already so old, yet you're still so rude." Although he was scolding her, his words were not harsh. It showed his tolerance and generosity towards the girl in front of him. The girl's name was Wang Shang. She was the granddaughter of Minister Wang Zhua and Wang Zhiqing's sister. Perhaps because they were siblings and they were too familiar with each other, Wang Shang did not take her brother's words seriously. Instead, she continued to chatter. "Brother, did you see the bathroom?" "What bathroom? What is that? Is it a person's name?" Wang Zhiqing's face was filled with confusion. Chapter 1629. Humph. I knew you hadn't seen it before. Wang Shang snorted. She knew her brother very well. He was very smart and had a lot of ideas, but there was one thing about him. He was too meticulous in doing things. He had a slow personality. She thought that her brother must not have had time to go to the washroom, so she purposely came to show off. "Brother, come here. I'll tell you what the washroom is, what's here, and how to use it." Wang Shang pulled Wang Zhiqing's hand and led him to the side of the room. After a full 10 minutes, Wang Zhiqing walked out of the washroom as if he was in a dream. After showing off, Wang Shang also left the room to find her sisters. Wang Zhiqing, who was left behind, was a little confused. The items in the bathroom just now had really shocked him. For example, the expensive shampoo, shower gel, the porcelain bathtub that was big enough for him to lie down in, and the toilet that could be flushed at any time. With Wang Zhiqing's family background, he had experienced these things before, but they were completely different from the things here. Take the bathtub for example. There was a faucet on the side. When you turned it to the left, it was cold water. When you turned it to the right, it was hot water. It was really very convenient. It was far different from his own home, where he had to boil water in advance to take a bath. When the water turned cold, he had to ask the servants to refill it. It was just a ship that was welcoming them, but the room was already so luxurious. Wang Zhiqing couldn't help but wonder what it would be like when they arrived at Xianxia's capital, Qiqian City. In fact, Wang Zhiqing wasn't the only one with such thoughts. Many people in the same industry had such thoughts. They were looking forward to the rest of the journey. It would take a few more days to get from Suzhou to Qiqian City. There were still things happening in Qiqian City. For example, a guest was welcomed in the palace. It wasn't exactly a guest. It should be said that it was a member of the family. He was Yang Qindong's fourth brother, Yang Yang. Among the brothers, Yang Yang was the most useless existence in Baiming. When his brothers had things to do, he became a good-for-nothing. He went to restaurants every day to walk birds, giving people the impression that he had nothing to do. In the end, Yang Yang was just born at the wrong time. He still had some ability and insight. This could be seen from the fact that he had condescended to create sixth brother early on. Sure enough, after deciding to follow Yang Qindong, Yang Yang's life changed. She held great power and became Xianxia's spokesperson in the Southern Ming dynasty. Not only did she receive the respect of countless people, she could get whatever she wanted with just a stretch of her hand. She truly lived the life of a deity. If he hadn't been assassinated by a ninja, he would still be in the Southern Ming Empire and wouldn't be willing to return to Kaisan City. This was not to say that Yang Yang did not like Qiqian City. In terms of facilities, Qiqian City was much better than the capital of the Southern Ming dynasty. However, since he was back here, he had to abide by the rules of the Southern Ming dynasty. For Yang Yang, who was used to freedom, it was more comfortable in the Southern Ming dynasty. He could do whatever he wanted. It had been a while since Yang Qindong returned to Qiqian City. During this time, the two brothers had met, but time was too tight and they only exchanged a few words. Now that Yang Qindong had done all the important things he should have done, he slowly became free. This fourth brother came to visit again and this family banquet was held. Since it was a family banquet, there naturally wouldn't be any idle people. Even the few servants of the Yang family didn't come. The only ones sitting at the table were Yang Qindong, Hu Yan, and Yang Yang. Hu Yan was the princess consort. When Yang Qindong wasn't in Qiqian City, her status had always been high. Letting her sit with him expressed Yang Qindong's respect for his fourth brother. If there was no wife accompanying him, it would be a brotherly banquet. Haha, your sister-in-law didn't come. Otherwise you two would be able to talk. Yang Yang looked at Hu Yan and chuckled. Then fourth brother can send someone to bring sister-in-law over when you have time, Hu Yan replied with a smile. All right, I'll send someone to do that. Haha, Yang Yang heartily laughed. Then, he looked at Yang Qindong. He took the initiative to raise his wine glass and said with a sigh, Sixth brother, although I am your elder brother, I am convinced by what you have done. Come, let me toast you. Haha, fourth brother, please. Yang Qindong laughed heartily and toasted his brother. Although one was his fourth brother and the other was his sixth brother, the disparity in status made Yang Yang no longer dare to act like an elder brother. Over the years, Yang Qindong had proven his ability with facts. Not only did Yang Yang feel pressured when he saw Yang Qindong, he even felt restrained sometimes. Even big brother Yang Gong, second brother Yang Rang, third brother Yang Shi, and fifth brother Yang Gui Feng, who were far away in the capital of Northern Ming, felt the same way. Once they saw the current Yang Qindong, they would also feel the pressure increase. After toasting with Yang Qindong, Yang Qindong felt a little more confident. At the very least, he didn't feel that Yang Qindong was estranged from his fourth brother. This gave him the confidence to say the words he had prepared because he truly wanted to do something and help Yang Qindong. Before he could think of a way to say it, Yang Qindong took the lead and asked, Fourth brother, are your injuries okay? Don't worry, the assassination attempt happened in the capital of the Southern Ming dynasty. They must express their sincerity and compensate you personally. Because of an assassination attempt, the Southern Ming dynasty had to compensate him. Only Yang Qindong had the confidence to say these words. If it was someone else, they would at most receive a few words of comfort. As for others, it was better not to think about it. It was just a daydream. Ha! Yang Yang used this as an opening and laughed. Then he patted his chest and said, Fourth brother, my body is very good. Sixth brother doesn't need to worry. As for compensation, you can decide. I have saved some money over the years, so I don't really care. But speaking of this matter, the Southern Ming Dynasty has contacted me in private. Oh, they contacted you in private? As if it was the first time he heard about this matter, Yang Chendong picked up a piece of cauliflower and put it in his mouth. Yang Chendong had already trained himself to not show his emotions on his face. Sometimes he would smile, but no one knew what he was thinking in his heart. Yes, they contacted me. Yang didn't look at Yang Chendong's expression. Instead, he said, the person who contacted me has a big background. Big background? Then it must be a big shot. Let me guess. Yang Chendong's lips curled slightly. Some fragments of his mind couldn't help but faintly connect. Seeing that Yang Chendong wanted to guess, Yang also became interested. Okay, then sixth brother can guess. Yang Chendong didn't let Yang wait for long before he spat out 3 words. Manager Chow. Yang's eyes flashed with astonishment. Then, he couldn't help but give a thumbs up. Fourth brother is amazing. It is indeed Chao Jixiang. He is now the manager of the Southern Ming Dynasty's Imperial Guard. Following that, Yang spilled everything he knew, as well as what Chao Jixiang's men had told him. As for this Chao Jixiang, although he has a high position and power in the Southern Ming Dynasty, that is only on the surface. Right now, he is not too favored by the Ying sect. Moreover, there is an additional Qian Sangbao above him. This person has gotten together with another head eunuch, Kai Zhong, and is constantly squeezing his living space. As a result, Chao Jixiang is currently in a difficult situation. Thus, he used the assassination to contact me. On the surface, it seems like he is apologizing, but in reality, he is intending to rely on me and change his allegiance. Fourth brother, I can feel it. Originally, I did not want to pay attention to them, but now, I feel that it is an opportunity. I think that this is a trap. Yang Chendong really wanted to say this, but he didn't. Because he needed people to enter his trap, he could only pretend that he didn't know anything. However, no one knew better than him what kind of person Chao Jixiang was in history, and how much trust he had received from the Ying sect's Zhu Qizhen. Speaking of Zhu Qizhen, he trusted the people around him, especially the eunuchs, who seemed to have no bottom line. In history, even though he was tricked by Wang Zhan and lost the Tumu castle, after the Ying sect's restoration, he issued an edict to clear Wang Zhan's name and used incense wood to summon spirits. In the capital, he built a Jingzhong shrine in the northern courtyard of the Wisdom Temple to worship spirits. Chao Jixiang had once been under Wang Zhan's tutelage. In the eyes of the Ying sect, he was one of Wang Zhan's substitutes. In history, he had plotted with General Shi Hang and Cabinet Grand Secretary Su Yozhen to lead troops to welcome the Ying sect's restoration. His contributions were even greater, and he was rewarded with large amounts of land. He also assisted in the military affairs of the capital. Chao Jixiang's nephews, Chao Xian and Chao Duo, were appointed as hereditary commanders of the Genie Guards, and were gradually promoted to become military governors. The number of people under Chao Jixiang's command who were able to become officials numbered in the hundreds and thousands. There were many officials in the court who relied on Chao Jixiang in hopes of being promoted. Chao Jixiang had a lot of power at that time, and together with Shi Hang, they were called Chao Shi. It wasn't impossible for such a person to betray the Ying sect. However, if he betrayed Zhu Qizhen and fled to the Xianxia, he was not trustworthy at all. Looking at the Bugnam of Gojoseon Palace, apart from the guards in charge of security, there were no other men. There were no eunuchs at all. It had to be said that Yang Chendong did not have a good impression of eunuchs. This was because in history, many bad things happened because of them. However, Yang Chendong had interacted with eunuchs before. For example, the head eunuch Mao Mu, who was serving the empress in the southern Ming palace, was one of Yang Chendong's men. From time to time, he would send important information. However, on the surface, Yang Chendong did not have any eunuchs by his side. In such an environment, if Chao Jixiang wanted to join the Xianxia, what could he do? He did not have a position for himself, so why would he surrender? It was not easy for him to escape from Baiming to the southern Ming dynasty and join the Ying sect's Zhu Qizhen. Why would he betray once more? Chapter 1630. And even if all of this was true, how could Yang Chendong believe a person who could betray him at any time? Yang Chendong was familiar with the history of the Great Ming Dynasty. Even though Yang Chendong didn't seem to care much about the Great Ming Dynasty, and Chao Jixiang was also a guard of the Imperial Secret Service. He was very mysterious and came and went without a trace. However, Yang Chendong also knew this person very well. It was because of this understanding that he was very sure that this person would never betray the Southern Ming Dynasty's emperor, Zhu Qizhen, nor would he surrender like Yang said. All of this was just a trap. With a plan in mind, Yang Chendong pretended that he didn't know anything and said to Yang, "Fourth brother, this is a good thing. Since that's the case, you can continue to contact him. If you need help, whether it's the Security Bureau or the CIA, we will do our best to help." This was exactly what Yang wanted to hear. He also wanted to make some achievements. He immediately said happily, "It just so happens that there are people sent by Chao Jixiang in the observation group. When the time comes, I will have a good chat with him." Seeing Yang Chendong's excited expression, Yang Chendong couldn't bear to dampen his enthusiasm. He also wanted to see what kind of trap the other party had set. He didn't believe that Yang Chendong would betray him. With the other party's ability, even if something happened to him, it was impossible for him to rise to the position of Xianxia. In other words, there would only be disadvantages and no benefits. Thus, Yang Chendong also wanted to see who else was involved in this matter. Of course, even if this matter didn't happen, Yang Chendong already had a rough understanding in his heart. He only needed to wait for the other party to set up the trap. At that time, he would let the person who set up the trap know what it meant to seek death. Yang Chendong was holding a family banquet in the palace. Because Yang Wu was in charge of the palace's affairs, he had been accompanying him. In a small courtyard outside the palace, Cui Xiao left the palace with the excuse of not feeling well. She came to see Yang Lu, who had been waiting for a long time. "How was it? No one noticed you when you came out, right?" After seeing Cui Xiao appear, Yang Lu sat on a chair and asked with an unpleasant expression. Over the years, Yang Lu had hardly exercised his body. Moreover, he had indulged in eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling. His body was no longer as good as before. Reporting to Master, "No. The 8th Madam can't wait to see me?" As soon as I said I wasn't feeling well, she immediately approved my leave. Cui Xiao put away the arrogant attitude she had in the palace. At this moment, she was as docile as an obedient lamb. It couldn't be helped. The lives of Cui Xiao's parents and 2 older brothers were in the hands of Yang Lu, and if she were to offend him, her family would immediately be destroyed. What she didn't know was that her family had already been killed by Yang Lu. Speaking of which, Yang Lu didn't have the time to send a few people to keep an eye on Cui Xiao's family. Besides, it was difficult for the living to keep a secret. Only the dead were the most reassuring. "Very good, you did well." Yang Lu still had some understanding of the ways of a master. He knew that if he praised his subordinates properly, they would be full of enthusiasm. "You can rest assured that your family is now very safe. They have food and drink, and they are living very well. When the matter is done, you will be given a large sum of money, and you can reunite with your family." "Thank you, Master." When she heard that she could reunite with her family, Cui Xiao's eyes flashed with yearning. The reason why she did these things was for the safety of her family. "Well, you tell me, is there anything unusual about the 8th Madam?" When it came to business, Yang Lu, who was sitting on the chair, was a lot straighter. Reporting to Master, the 8th Madam has completely lost power. Bugnam of Gojoseon has been back for so long, and he has not come to the 8th Madam's palace. Even Princess Yang Xian has not seen her father for so long. When Cui Xiao answered this question, her tone was very firm. Perhaps adults can deceive people, but a 6-year-old child can't deceive her. This answer was the same as the result of Yang Lu's analysis. He nodded with satisfaction and said, "It seems that Bugnam of Gojoseon really regards the 8th Madam as the backing behind the ninjas. This is the best. He will not suspect others because of this. But you still have to keep an eye on it. If there is any movement, tell me immediately." "Yes, Master." Cui Xiao replied respectfully. "Good. By the way, did Yang Wu find anything?" Thinking of his brother, Yang Lu's eyes had a trace of hesitation. He admitted that this time he took advantage of the feelings between brothers, but there was no other way. With the smuggling he did, once Yang Chendong found out, it would be difficult for him to survive. At that time, even if the other brothers pleaded for him, the result would not change. Over the years, Yang Lu thought that he understood Yang Chendong. This person had his own principles when doing things. Anyone who was willing to step on the line, no matter what kind of merits they had in the past, would be heavily punished. And what he did was not as simple as stepping on the line, it was simply challenging Yang Chendong's bottom line. There would definitely not be a good result. Even so, he could only give it a try. If he won, then he would reach the peak of his life. On the other hand, if he lost, he would just die. Even if he waited, he would still die. If there was still a chance, why not? As such, Yang Lu's outlook on life was completely distorted. When asked about Yang Wu, Cui Xiao replied truthfully, "This person, other than being a little lecherous, really doesn't have any other shortcomings. After observing for a while, I found that Yang Wu is not a greedy person. He never accepts gifts, and basically there is no abuse of power, so it is really difficult to threaten him." Yes, it is very difficult. Yang Lu couldn't help but sigh after listening. He had thought of dragging Yang Wu down more than once. It must be said that this person's position in Crimson City was too stable, and his influence was great. If he had his help, many things would be much smoother, and he wouldn't have to be so careful today. For example, if Yang Wu was willing to cooperate with him, he could completely control the palace. Then, for the safety of his wife and child, Yang Hodong would have to bow down. Unfortunately, he couldn't find anything to use against him after searching for a long time. And if he were to say something rashly, not only would Yang Wu not help him, he might even report him to the young master. If that was the case, all the planning would be meaningless. Although it is very difficult, we still have to try. Let's continue searching. I don't believe that he won't be greedy when he has such great power. And as long as we find him, our big plan will succeed. Yang Lu still didn't give up. I understand. Cui Xiao nodded and agreed. Then, Cui Xiao left. A figure flashed in the small courtyard, and Yang Ying walked out from the darkness. Yang Ying, do you think it's possible to persuade Yang Wu to work for us? Seeing Yang Ying, Yang Lu didn't straighten his body, and instead collapsed, as comfortable as possible. A look of disgust flashed across Yang Ying's eyes as he stared at Yang Lu's body that was as soft as mud. Even Yang Lu didn't know that his real identity was a secret agent of the Southern Ming Brocade Guard, and was directly under the command of the factory guard, Chao Jixiang. In the entire Southern Ming Empire's embroidered uniform guard, only Chao Jixiang knew his identity. This was the greatest way to prevent his identity from being exposed. Facts also proved that all these years, ever since he sided with Yang Lu, and became the most trusted butler step by step, no one doubted his identity. And Yang Lu could be where he was today, it was all because of his help. A young man with ambition had turned into a gluttonous, lazy, and greedy person who was afraid of death. Many times, Yang Ying looked down on Yang Lu. This was because if the two of them were in different positions, he would never betray his master. This was one of the 5 servants of Bugnam of Gojoseon, and his identity was extremely noble. As long as he didn't court death, he would definitely live a life of glory. However, he didn't have the ability, and yet he still wanted to achieve great things. Why didn't he take a piss and look at himself in the mirror? For someone like Yang Lu, even if he was a small 7th-ranked county official, he wouldn't be able to manage a county well. Yet he still wanted to be like Yang Chendong, a prince of the great Ming dynasty? He really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Although he looked down on him in his heart, before the mission was completed, he was still very respectful on the surface. He lowered his head and said, "Master, it's too difficult to persuade Yang Wu, and the risk is too great. It's better to abandon this idea for now. The Southern Ming Dynasty's observation group is about to arrive, and there's also a secret agent from the Southern Ming Brocade Guard following them. He will come in contact with Yang Yang, so we should do a good job in writing this article. Yes, we still have to use Yang Yang first. Speaking of which, this person is an idiot. He doesn't even know that he's being used. Haha. Speaking of Yang Yang, Yang Lu laughed loudly. However, how could he know that in Yang Ying's eyes, he was also an idiot? After the Southern Ming Dynasty's observation group was bumpy on the sea for a few days, they finally appeared outside the new pier of Crimson City. Because of Yang Qindong's importance, in order to welcome them, Yu Qian and Shen Yu did a lot of work. When they knew that the observation group was about to arrive at the new pier, 2 old officials and a group of Xianxia officials stood outside the pier to welcome them. On the new pier, there were many street lamps, and the cement steps were painted with a layer of gold paint. It looked very magnificent. In front of the pier, a military band was wearing brand new military uniforms and standing in formation, playing the song Our Great Han, adapted from Our Great Ming Dynasty. Under the passionate rhythm, there was a group of youths wearing white and blue school uniforms standing at the side with flower garlands in their hands. They were all primary school students from the Yang Family Academy, and they were here to present flowers to the observation group. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.